meeting will come to order. This is the June 11th, 2013 meeting of the Town of Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I'd just like to begin to make an announcement for any members of the public or interested parties. On the notice for public hearing, we had two items, 1410 South Pine Creek Road, number 1. Number 2 was 120 and 144 Tuller Road, a subdivision application. The Tuller Road matter is not going forward this evening. There was a deficiency in the notice that needed to be provided to adjoining neighbors. Because of that, it cannot proceed this evening. So again, if anyone is here for the 120, 144 Tuller Road matter later this evening, we will not be taking that up this evening. That being said, we will begin with meeting minutes of the May 28, 2013 meeting. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson has moved to approve. Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Commissioner Suter?
Yeah. Under meeting minutes on page 1 in the middle, where we voted to approve the meeting minutes of May 14th, as I recall, we made some corrections to those minutes, and I think they should say after 2013, it should read, comma, as corrected, period.
Agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Suter.
And secondly, on 1243 Post Road, in the middle of page 2, we voted to postpone the compliance application of Finn Restaurant to expand the outdoor dining patio pending the approval of the fire marshal. I think the correct phrasing should be pending the report of the fire marshal, because there are other factors besides his approval that we have to consider.
Thank you, Commissioner Suter. Are there any other additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. One other matter, we now have the appointment of Zoning Enforcement Officer. Mr. Demancher?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, quick overview on this. The department, thank you, Chair. The department has been without the zoning enforcement officer position for some time. The reason for this is the CEO, the zoning enforcement officer that we had for over 20 years, took a medical leave of absence, and then after some years, ultimately took retired under a medical leave retirement. During that time, basically what we've done is the assumption of the work that was created was handled by our in-house staff. The assumption of this work did create some tentative legal issues that had been handled through the town attorney, and also, if you remember, the commission had some interim actions just to basically confirm that, in fact, the enforcement of the regulations can continue with our current personnel. What I'd like to do, though, is acknowledge the department personnel for their unselfish attitude toward this situation and commend them, not condemn them. I'll condemn them later, but commend them for their efforts and professionalism. That's, as you know, Jim Wendt, Matt Decker, who I'll talk about briefly tonight, also, and Joe Biankowski. They all assumed, in some instances, work over and above their job requirements, and I'm very thankful for that, and I think the town is in good stead with this department personnel. So now that the CEO is technically and retired, I would like to reestablish the zoning enforcement program by reestablishing a zoning enforcement officer. As you know, and if you review section 2.31 of our regulations, the zoning enforcement officer shall be appointed by the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, work under the supervision of the planning and zoning director, and have the responsibilities and authority to enforce the zoning regulations. They include no application for certificate of zoning compliance, order to comply, or other zoning enforcement documents shall be issued unless signed by the zoning enforcement officer. This is in our regulations, and also it's actually the authority for this comes from the state statutes that outlines those types of requirements. Tonight, Matt Decker is here. He has been in the TPZ office since 2005, approximately 8 years. He has assumed, and during the time of the absence of our zoning enforcement officer, assumed a large portion of the ZEO's responsibilities. And what I would request now of the commission is that we would appoint him as the formal zoning enforcement officer for the town of Fairfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demancher. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Decker as the zoning enforcement officer of Fairfield? Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Suter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Barrett's seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
To start with, if he's moving to that position, who's going to take his position?
Well, what we've done, as a matter of fact, part of the time that this took to reestablish it, we've done a reorganization in the office. The zoning enforcement officer, actually, some years ago, that position was reduced by almost half time. A short period of time after that is when that CEO took ill. So to make a long story short, what we've done is we've eliminated that part-time position, and basically the zoning inspector position, which Mr. Decker has had since 2005, is now becoming the zoning enforcement officer. So essentially, we're doing all this. First Selectman who's here could confirm this, with actually a reduction in our budget.
Will there be enough staff to deal with
I am confident.
with the number of illegal signs that keep flopping up?
I'm confident, yes, that our current staff will be able to uphold the zoning regulations of the town of Fairfield to the best of their ability, and in a way that this town has come to require and expect. With that said, there will be another budget review next year, and if I find, and if this commission finds, that there is some lacking in our the number of employees we have, and we would need some help, absolutely, I'm sure we'd be asking the administration to take a hard look at that. But I'm confident right now, with the personnel I have, that we could maintain and enforce the zoning regulations of the town of Fairfield.
Thank you. Commissioner Suter?
Is this now for transition?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. I think that's a positive step because with the economy gradually, with the economy gradually recovering, there's more commercial activity, and in fact, we have a number of issues with signage and with outdoor dining and with other gray areas where businesses competing aggressively sometimes exceed the limitations that they should observe. So we need somebody to sort of ride herd on that, and I think this is an appropriate time to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Suter. And thank you. I would just note, give a challenge to Mr. Decker. I'm assuming he's going to be appointed. In the event he is, I took a drive today, just along the Post Road. I didn't even hit Black Rock Turnpike or any of the neighborhood design districts or Greenfield Hill. And the complaints I get more of than anything else, as the chairman in particular, are illegal signs. It doesn't a day go by when someone complains to me about a sign and they want it taken down. They grab me when I'm around town, they email me, they call me complaining. So I took a look at the ones we have, and some are, I don't want to call them just, they're 3-foot or 2-by-3-foot signs or 2-by-2-foot signs. Some are getting downright out of control with massive 6-foot signs, like at the Cumbies with the gas price. So it's probably 4 or 5 feet. A massive A-frame in Southport with a garden center. And I'll just read you alone. Just coming from Southport, from the stretch from Southport to Bridgeport on the Post Road, these are the businesses with at least one, in some cases multiple, illegal signs right now on the curbs or on their buildings, many of them on the curbs. Fairfield Automotive Service, Smoke for Less, the Hyundai dealer, Dunkin' Donuts Southport, the Shell 7-Eleven Southport, Izzo's, Personal Training Professionals, Town Fair Tires, Southport Alterations, J&M Cigars, Subway, Roly Poly, Caracou, Chloe's Closet, Cargo Bay, Chef's Table, Fairfield Clothier, a real estate box with brochures popped up in front of the Fairfield University bookstore, Midas Touch, a business named Chloe something, you've got Chloe something next to Molto, the Spa, as well as the Triathlon Center on the Post Road, Hanson's Floors, Beachside Barbershop, Cumberland Farms, Bob's Plaza. There's 3 or 4 signs for businesses that aren't even in Bob's Plaza on the curb strip. Sunoco, Village Bagels, Duchess, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, Luigi Pizzas, Vinny's, Hunan Pavilion, Hazzle Dazzle, a new business, Oasis Massage at the Post Road Plaza, Public Storage, Goodyear, Splash, Senior Salsa, Citgo, Shell, Charles Schwab, the yoga facility on Uncowa Road, the salon next to Mike's Pizza, the Pantry, Mrs. Green's, Subway, the School of Rock, H Salon, to begin. And those are just the ones I noticed on a simple drive up and down the post road today. It's almost every business has these signs now, and it's just becoming worse and worse. They're blocking sidewalks downtown. We have them along the stretch. You know, we're from Chef's Table to the bookstore, all those businesses. There's 3 or 4 businesses with signs sitting in the middle of the sidewalks. So I give Matt a challenge to sign out one of the town pickup trucks some afternoon or some morning and pick them up and bring them to the dump and dispose of them accordingly, and they're on town property. The businesses that have signs on their buildings, such as the Dunkin' Donuts in Southport with the new large signs on the pole where they don't belong, or other businesses, to send them letters, cease and desist letters, and just take enforcement action as we can against them to level the playing field, because you know, we see what happens when one business has them. They all want them, and they make bigger ones, more flagrant ones with flags. We've got them with flags. We've got them spinning in the breeze now. So I think we have to do something about that, and I know Matt will jump on that, so I thank him in advance for that. And there's also other parts of town, of course. Black Rock is just as bad as are the other neighborhoods, and that's just our post road corridor. Any other discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of the appointment of Matt Decker as the zoning enforcement officer of the town of Fairfield signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. And I thank the rest of the staff, as Mr. Devanchik did. I will not condemn them, but commend them for their work in the past for acting in this capacity for us. Thank you.
Very much.
We have one application to recommend to public hearing, 95 Chester Place, re-subdivision application of Walter Buck for 3 lots in a B zone. Mr. Went?
This is a subdivision of land that was once owned by the D'Addario family and was subdivided and then unsubdivided. It actually should be in an R3 zone, not a B zone. That's a mistake, not on the agenda, but on the actual application that needs to be corrected. Basically, it's a 3-lot re-subdivision application in an R3 zone, does require public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Went. Is there a motion?
Motion to move to public hearing.
Commissioner Jacobs has moved this to public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jacobson is seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of referring to public hearing, 95 Chester Place, re-subdivision application of Walter Buck for 3 lots in an R3 zone, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. We're next going to begin a planning discussion. There's 2 items, one of which, the frontage access, we can actually take up later in the meeting while we have folks here for various items. The first, outdoor dining, we probably should take up now because our first selectman is here, and he's asked to come to address us on that issue, on handling outdoor dining on a go-forward basis in particular. So I invite Mr. Tetreault to, and our town attorney, Stanton Lesser, to join us so we can engage in that discussion. And this stems from a recent situation where we had a business which purported to have a lease with the town. We approved certain outdoor dining, and in fact it did not have a lease with the town. And the first selectman and I have discussed on a go-forward basis how we should handle these requests in the future when a local business would like to lease certain property owned by the town of Fairfield for things such as outdoor dining before they come to us. So the town doesn't necessarily approve things, and we feel bound. And then again, we can work concurrently and in conjunction with each other. And Mr. Tetreault had a great idea about how to handle that from the selectman's perspective, so I'll let you go from there. Mike, thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and thank you to the Commission for letting us hold this discussion tonight. The discussion on, in this case, the use of sidewalks started with the Chelsea restaurant, but I think it allows us to have a larger discussion in terms of what is the plan and what is the vision by this Commission. As first selectman, the Chair and I talked a little bit about this, and the point I made to him is that I see that one of my objectives is to support the plan and vision of this Commission. The objective tonight is to discuss a process that kind of keeps us on the same page, and simply put, that we don't have a lease without TP&Z approval, and we don't have TP&Z approval without a lease. And with your permission, I'd just like to kind of step through Chelsea as an example. I realize that it's on I'm not here to discuss that specific case, but I just thought it might be helpful to use that as an example. And it started about a month ago when I stopped at a red light after coming from Naughty Dolphin, buying pizza. And the visual was that it looked like the patio was using the entire sidewalk. And I was hit with, why was Malto rejected 9 months ago or so, if this was okay? So I went to planning and zoning staff to see kind of what transpired and how this came out. I was told there was a lease. When we looked in the file, there was a description, a map, but no lease. I'd asked staff then to visit with the owner and ask him to vacate the premises. I got a call from their attorney saying that, hold it, this is part, this is a valuable thing. We were in the process of negotiating a lease, we just hadn't completed it. And I realized, and the question that was asked is, was I going to sign a lease? And I realized that, to me, that crystallized the question. I didn't know if I should sign it because I didn't know what planning and zoning had in mind. I didn't know if I sign this one, when would I not sign another one? When do you say yes, when do you say no? And how did we get off base? In this case, it's obvious that the commission didn't know there wasn't a lease, and from the first selectman standpoint, I didn't know you'd approved use of town property. So the question is, we need those to happen hand in hand, not either or. And just to be clear, I am a patron of Chelsea. I've had some fabulous meals here. I am kind of concerned that we get on the same page in terms of when we say yes and when we say no. Does this apply to restaurants or stores? Is this a precedent that basically says we just gave away half of our sidewalk in town? I realized that I wanted a better understanding of what the vision is of TP&Z. It raises the question of what comes first, the lease or the approval? What's our process and how do we improve our process? So what I was hoping to do tonight is just raise some issues for discussion. I don't mean to suggest I have all the answers on this. I'm really here to listen and learn and just kind of come to an agreement. And literally, I think it's your role to define the vision, to define the plan, and together define the process so we make sure that we're on the same page for that. I did talk to the chair about the idea of a letter of agreement. Rather than spending any attorney time coming up with a lease or not coming up with a lease, and I used a real estate analogy that may not be exactly appropriate, but it's similar to, for those of you that have recently been involved in buying or selling a home, it's a little bit like a binder, where the parties come to terms, but they haven't hired attorneys to draw out all the sales contracts and everything else until you can kind of get through some basics. It seemed to me that it was reasonable that if we were going to do something, we come to terms of an agreement, and that's something that could be presented to this commission as documentation that there's a meeting of the minds, that the town is willing to lease that property. But if you're not going to approve it, no sense spending a lot of attorney time drawing up a lease that may not be applicable in the future. I believe in your packet for an item later tonight, when Chelsea comes up, we did draft up a sample document of that. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you want to, I'll go through a couple other things and maybe we can come back and refer to that if the commission would like. I think that it's important that there's a complete map. I think as I went back and as I looked at the map that was included in the packet, it didn't look like the patio took up that much space. I kept trying to reconcile with visually what I was looking at from the stoplight, if you will. And I realized that there are a couple things missing on the map. One is that there's a tree and a utility pole that are in close proximity, and they weren't kind of shown on the map. There's also a cutout for the tree. What I mean by that is there's like a rectangle that's cut out in the sidewalk where the tree is planted within that rectangle. That has a fact of shrinking the sidewalk space. There's also an awning over the patio area that doesn't take up any more space, but visually challenges that. And it led me to the question of again, what's the vision for use of the sidewalk? Are there minimums? Again, going back to Malto's, when I looked at that, I was, and the owner was, actually called me up at one point, and I suggested to him that the commission was very clear on their use of sidewalks and what they needed and had advocated for more space all the way through. So I said, you need to talk to them and explain to them what the dimensions are and where you are, but other than that, they're clear and you need to follow their instruction. This was after he'd already violated your guideline or some other things. So that left me, between that experience and this experience, it left me somewhat confusing. I thought it might be somewhat confusing for business owners in town in terms of what guidelines are we applying, what the minimums are, so folks know what to expect. So with kind of all those questions on the table, that's why I thought it might make sense to have a little bit of a discussion, get at least agree on the process we'd follow, see if this better terms of agreement type of thing is acceptable to the commission as providing documentation that the town is willing to sign a lease subject to your approval.
Thank you. And by way of background, not to talk about Chelsea, because that comes up later, but last year, when the last Chelsea application was here, it was represented to us that there was a lease, and I know some of the commissioners raised eyebrows, gave that some thought as to the town entering into a lease before the commission ourselves had reviewed it and had said, yeah, that's a good idea, or the town has said they're leasing this much, could we come and lease, could it approve less or more if we think it was a greater area that should be there for outdoor dining in a particular use. And this, I think, we don't have a lot of restaurants on town property right now. We have just Gentro and Fairfield Tavern.
Old Post Tavern.
Old Post Tavern, the Old Post Tavern. More may be coming, since outdoor dining is such a growing thing in Fairfield. We've approved a lot of it, and it's really changed the dynamics of downtown and other parts of town to the better, I think. If you go down there on any weeknight, especially weekends, with so many folks walking around everywhere. And we need a way where the town, before we spend time approving things, we need to hear that the town, in principle, and the selectmen are willing to enter into a lease for that property, and they've come to terms up to a certain square footage and location. And then we would have in front of us this idea of a binder where we look at it and say, yeah, the town would lease the property if we approved a lease up to that amount of square footage.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just to make sure that we don't, one of the goals is to make sure that we're not giving mixed message like the town's agreeing to lease 200 feet and you all are approving 100 feet kind of thing. What we did on the terms of agreement is just agree to $1 per square foot amount. So
Exactly.
Whatever the square footage you agree to, there's only one number. We don't have dueling numbers at any point, so there wouldn't be any mistake in it.
Right, it would be flexible, the square footage, up to make, so we would have the flexibility when we look at it as planners. And this way the town would make that, an applicant would approach the town first, come up with an agreement on numbers. Whether there should be numbers that's up to the town. And maybe there shouldn't be, maybe there should be. That's a selectman issue that they can think about with economic development on a go forward, what we charge, how much, if at all, we charge. But once we have that, we can then review the application, make our decision, and if we approve it in the affirmative, it would be up to the town attorney to draft that lease, and the outdoor dining would not commence until the formal lease is in place with any insurance coverage or whatever Attorney Lesser thinks is required. So, is there any discussion? Great, Commissioner Sutter? Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I think that process is probably workable. I know with the real estate analogy, after you have the binder, then you have sort of an agreed community or area-wide contract for the sale of land, where most of the details are already ironed out and agreed by the bar. I think the town has been using also a somewhat standardized agreement for these outdoor dining places, and I think it's important to have a standardized agreement that the town is happy with, so that as little as possible has to be changed or set forth in the letter of intent signed with a particular establishment.
I think that's the intent, subject to any restrictions that this commission might put on those, and I can't imagine any that the administration might put on, but it would allow for those to be identified for you before you come to your decision.
And just to the first level we have before Commissioner Barrett goes, we have some standard conditions. One has to do with music outside, speakers. We have a condition that the barricades are required at businesses if they have a liquor license in particular. One such as the Fairfield bookstore, Starbucks, does not have a liquor license, so a barricade is not required. They can request one, and on that one we told them no barricade, keep it open to the sidewalk, so one can walk up from the tables without having to come from inside the store, which has worked out well with people with strollers and carriages and things. They could sit there and not have to go all the way in and out. We have restrictions regarding advertising. You cannot advertise on those banners, and for the few restaurants that have put lithograph or silk screened on the banners, we've had them reverse them so you can see them from the inside, so they don't become billboards on the streets as well.
Illegal signs.
This Commissioner Jacobs is showing you an example of one that's backwards right now. It's Mike's Pizza. It needs to be reversed. So those are the type of restrictions we normally would put on them. Commissioner Barrett,
Yeah,
Commissioner
just a
Jacobs.
couple comments. The first selectman asked about our vision. I would just say, I think probably we're all clear on this, that our vision has been to really encourage outdoor dining. I'll say that, when I served as chairman, I met with chairmen of surrounding towns, and the one thing they asked is, how are you doing so good with the restaurants? Fairfield is so vibrant, and we've really made an effort to do so. That being said, I would say just about all of us really have always tried to balance that with pedestrian access. An example would be, there was a wild rice application once before where they tried to take more than was approved. We were out there with tape, measuring, making them put it away, getting down to really figuring out what would be a good balance between, let them have outdoor dining and also have, a good pedestrian walkway. So we are concerned about that. As far as giving thoughts, I never gave any thought to somebody using town property without a lease until last week. It was represented to us that it was a lease, so that's just something you just read and say, okay. So I agree. I think it'll be good if we can define a process. I don't know that it's so much working together as we get just a process defined for how one body refers things to another. And I think I'm okay with whatever suggestions are made, as long as you need more information for us to approve it. We need information for you. Maybe there's some case where they wouldn't want to enter in a lease for some reason. So I think I think that's a great idea to define that process. The question about what was visual, you see visually versus what was approved, that frustrates us too. That's really encroachment and enforcement. I think it happens a lot. People just, you approve one thing and they take something a little bit more, and we're not often out there with tape measuring, what they do. So I really don't know how. Maybe, Mr. Decker can come back and talk about that.
If I might just be clear, I'm not suggesting they did encroach. I'm just saying visually it appeared that way. So I don't mean to
no.
suggest there was anything that they did that wasn't in their map.
Absolutely.
Literally sitting in the car, it looked different than...
Yeah, I'm not saying they did either. I'm saying I think there are probably cases where people have, and we don't always go out and police that, because it's a visual thing later if somebody adds another table or something. So I don't know how we do that, but that's a very good point.
I have a question. Yes.
When you get an application for outdoor dining that's obviously going to be in front of a building and looks like it may be on the sidewalk, do you request a map from the applicant?
Yes.
And do you verify that the property that they're seeking to use is their own property and not town property? The reason I ask that is if people are claiming it's their own property, they're not going to come to the town to ask for a lease. They'll just go and apply to you folks, and we might not have any knowledge that it is actually town property. I assume that you do
Our
check
staff
that
can
out.
answer that, how they review these.
The short answer is yes, and there are three examples. There are only three examples where there are seating on the town property, which we've discussed already. The Old Town Centro and Chelsea. So all the other properties are within private property. Yeah, right. And typically there's a survey of the property that's submitted with the application to confirm that.
And Mr. Chairman, I just, since a lot of the discussion is centering on restaurants at the moment, I guess my question is, do the rules we have apply just to restaurants? Are they the only ones that are allowed to use sidewalk, or do we make a distinction between merchants that might find outdoor retail space, much like the merchant on the corner of Sanford Street and Post Road did this weekend, where they took over the sidewalk for outdoor sales?
I was not aware they did
Actually,
that.
maybe it was see this weekend or weekend before. Forgive me, some personal issues. The last two weekends kind of blend together.
I can address that. With the exception of the townwide sidewalk sale that happens, it's like a Chamber of Commerce event. Our regulations don't permit outside display of merchandise unless the commission specifically permits it, and typically that's considered additional floor area that would trigger well, first of all, we don't encourage it because it gets to be cluttered. Secondly, it adds technically to this floor space of the facility, which would trigger additional parking. The exception that this commission has made recently is the commission has adopted an amendment to the regulations that allows for outside dining specifically. The first 150 square feet of outside dining doesn't require any additional parking, in order getting to Mr. Barrett's comment about trying to, encourage it and be more vibrant. But I think, I don't mean to speak to the commission, but it's my impression that that was limited in scope to food service establishments only and not to retail establishments.
That's correct, and that's when Mr. Decker is done rounding up the signs, I'll have him coordinate, and a lot of it is just a dialogue. It's calling up businesses, not necessarily sending them a notice of a violation and a fine, but telling them, hey, guys, we know what you did Saturday, you can't do that, please don't do it again. Because then it just grows like weeds. Once one weed is out on the corner, every business will do it, and you'll have the sidewalks clogged, people on the street, it becomes a health and safety issue.
Well, and again, much credit goes to this commission, but what we created in Fairfield, it is a vibrant oasis in the middle of this economic turmoil that's out there. I had, about 4 or 5 months ago, had the opportunity, that long ago, go to dinner in Greenwich on a Saturday night. We finished dinner and we walked down Greenwich Avenue, and we saw some vacant storefronts. We saw like no buzz, no activity, and it was like, hold it, it's when you do that, you start to appreciate what we've accomplished here in Fairfield. So we don't want to lose that,
Right.
but we don't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg by overutilizing it either. So again, you've managed to walk a fine line between incentives and not overuse to this point, and I just want to support your plan on doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Thank you, Commissioner Lessie and Commissioner Wagner.
First, I want to thank the first selectman for coming. I think his ideas on process are very good, so that we don't run into problems in the future. With the vision, it is always a balance between sidewalks and outdoor dining. Is the table going to fall down? And there are people on the commission that lean more to one or the other. I usually look at it and want to make sure that there's at least the amount of sidewalk that's required by the Disability Act so that people can get through. There are commissioners who will go further and have less sidewalk. So even within the commission, there might not be full agreement as a vision, but we try to balance the outdoor dining, which has done wonderful things for the town, with the ability to walk through the town. And I do believe that your process will improve this in the future.
And if I might, along those lines, there is a bike pedestrian committee and a plan, some guidelines, and as you're looking at use of sidewalks, you might want to incorporate or kind of make sure that their guidelines and yours are compatible, or kind of reconcile the differences on one hand. And you did bring up the other point, I think, that both as part of their bike pedestrian plan, but also I think in general, we're looking at how to do more for the disabled, how to make sure that we're ADA compliant in more areas. We certainly have issues with town hall meetings and public meetings that we're trying to be more aware and conscious of, and a few issues on those just came to my desk the other day we're trying to address. We're trying to do more with grants in terms of making our beaches and recreational facilities more ADA compatible. So to the extent that we can keep that in mind when looking at sidewalks, that would be helpful too.
Thank you. Commissioner Lessie? And Commissioner Wagner, whatever order.
Thank you, Mr. Tetra, for coming. I appreciate that. For enforcement on a Saturday, just in case, shoe factory, I think that takes up the whole Sunny Days parking lot too. Is that what it is, the shoe factory? Yeah, Black Rock Turnpike. Just taking over the whole parking lot, Sunny Days on Saturdays, which is, now with the nice weather, is causing a problem as well. The question I have, I might have an issue, is with the leases on conditional approval for us in the spring, let's say, is, like I read in the paper, the case of Old Post Tavern that's behind in rent. Do we have to should we make that a conditional approval in the spring, that your rent has to be caught up 100% before we do approve it? Because then we're going to run into issues of different restaurants owing so much, and he owes, and I don't know, and then we're going to have all sorts of problems like that we're going to have to deal with.
If I might, let's see, from the top, Old Post Tavern either got behind on rent or didn't really ever start paying on a timely basis, based on your perspective. That was a management problem within the town. We have addressed that.
Okay.
Starting a year ago, when it came to my attention, we have focused on that and got the balance down considerably, though they are not current. What we're doing at this point is looking at giving them a 1-year extension, coupled with some payment terms to make sure that that balance is either cleared up or close enough, or we just won't extend it. So we're basically managing that by extending it for 1 year.
There was just one that I read in the paper, that's why I said that.
Yep, no,
Yeah.
that's I believe that's the only one we have issues with, but that's one more than we should, quite simply.
So in the springtime, when we go through our list of all the restaurants, should we have that in front of us showing everybody current, anybody behind?
I would say, simply put, if it's a financial issue in terms of their delivering on that, that the town should be managing. We should have never let it get to that situation, so we have a new process in place. I've asked our CFO, Bob Mayer, to make sure that those items are highlighted. For the past year, I've been getting a report every month that shows how Old Post Tavern is doing and shows that they're making progress towards their... It's the typical landlord problem, frankly. We let them get so far behind, they couldn't clean it up right away. So to some degree, we now own part of the problem. We're making sure they make progress. And the simple place to do that, because it's a financial issue, is that we're giving them a 1-year lease. If it were something where they were violating the zoning guideline or the regulations that you had put in place on them, we would come back to your commission and say, please help us sort that out.
And the easy check may be for the town attorney to have a provision in the lease. I'm sure there's a default provision if you don't pay the rent. And if a business does not pay, they would declare the lease in default, notify the staff. So, at the time for us to approve it, there would not be a lease in effect. We'd be so advised, the town attorney to the zoning staff, so we would take appropriate action. Commissioner Wagner?
I have a question along those lines for the commission. You approve each outdoor dining facility every year?
We recertify them every year.
You-
And we've changed our procedure. We do them all at the same time in March, I believe. We've done it in March. We've extended the season a little bit last year, and I think we may have done it this year because
Well,
of the
they
weather.
can get on the list. I mean, we do take things ad hoc
Right,
as
correct.
people want to come on and get into the program, if you will. And then as the year comes up, whoever was on the list comes
Gets-
back up before us. So in this
But
circumstance, there was an issue.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is that typically we do a 2-year lease. We do them 2 years at a time. It just saves time to do that. Because the first selectman can negotiate up to a 3-year lease, so we typically do them 2 years. But so they automatically, if they're on the list, they get recertified?
Well,
no, they don't-
recertification is not automatic, and my comments actually address this point, so.
Yeah, you're not automatically recertified. The list comes up, we discuss them, and if we choose to recertify them all, yes. If there's a problem with one of them that we've been having, they may not get recertified.
If, I would ask then that if that happens, that you notify either, Connie Nalfi or the first selectman's office, yeah, that you haven't recertified somebody so that we can follow up on that.
Our staff will notify you accordingly should that happen. Commissioner Wagner?
Thanks. Well, I actually think that that's a relatively simple fix, because I think that any lease that the town enters into for the use of town property by a restaurant owner for outdoor dining should be contingent upon TPC approval for that use. And so if TPC does not, recertify them for the next year, then frankly, then the lease to use that land is inoperative. So, I mean, that's a fairly simple fix. So, I had a couple of comments on the letter of intent that was submitted, but I just had a quick question about the Old Post Tavern. I mean, I understand the problems that can arise when a landlord doesn't chase after the tenant for payment. But did the Old Post Tavern try to pay? I mean, did they come to town hall with a check and say, who do I give this to? And everybody kind of said, we don't know, and turned them away? Or how did that actually work?
I don't know. As it came to my attention about a year ago that they were behind. There are a couple of different stories from some of the different players. There's a little bit of a management turnover in terms of who agreed to what on their end and who knew what on their end.
I see.
So rather than spending a whole lot of time sorting out what didn't work,
Yeah.
we kind of sat down and said, look, we need a commitment to make sure this gets paid going forward. They made a significant effort in improving that. Ideally, we would have liked it all paid off. That didn't quite happen. So that's why we're taking it 1 year at a time from this point.
Right, okay. Well,
And
that's helpful. I mean, so there is some sense of your investigation that there were people, in town hall that were aware at certain points of the issue, and it just never got resolved.
It was aware the follow-up wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right. So that's it. There's, from a financial standpoint, we knew what money we got in, we had exact count of that, there wasn't anything missing, lost, or out of control from that standpoint. It was a lack of follow-up in terms of somebody not paying us, and we've set a process in place to make sure that's properly highlighted from this standpoint. The other, to your earlier comment about your recertifying, my one caution, and I found this when I served on another board in this town, the Board of Finance, we'd pass a policy statement about no bonding for this type of thing. And one of the things we realized that if we didn't tell anybody, the only people who knew we had that policy were the 9 people on the Board of Finance. So I would encourage you that if there's something where you're expecting something not to happen, or it might impact the administration, or we should not do things, or we should comply or come to you if something's out of that sort, there's got to be a way to let us know that.
Sure.
The simplest way to do it is to make sure that's included in the lease, because that becomes a communication document for our 2 boards as well as the other piece. But if there's any other policies you want in place, or have in place, let me rephrase that, that might impact another board or commission, I would encourage you to make sure that your staff coordinate that with the other, so we're educated about what your goals are.
Sure. And I can appreciate that, and if there is a 2-year lease established that's contingent upon TVZ approval or recertification as a component of the lease, and we don't recertify, we give you notice of that. I'm just simply saying that as a term of any, lease agreement, that we can make the lease of the land contingent upon, proper approvals, and recertification.
I think we're talking really about 2 separate functions. Even with property that's leased by the town, if you as the zoning commission think that they're acting improperly, you give them a notice, to cease and desist.
Sure.
That's really kind of independent of the lease. It's like any other people who use their own property for outdoor dining. If they're not in compliance, you give them a notice to cease and desist. That's it. They have to do that. We have other issues, payment and other lease conditions, insurance, things like that, that are more of contractual things that are determined in the first selectman's office. But I think we certainly need both to have kind of, I think likewise, we need to tell you, although I don't think it's a zoning issue, but if they breach the lease, we'll take appropriate action, even though it's not a zoning issue.
Right.
Right now, there's only 3, so we can keep pretty good track of it, so it
Sure.
shouldn't be a problem.
And that was actually one of the other relationship comments I had, which is that, our approval will be contingent upon the town actually executing a lease, and, that will also be contingent upon them paying the rent and being current. And if they do fall behind, you need to let us know, and we can take it up.
I think that is kind of excellent looking at it from the other perspective, which is perhaps one of the zoning issues, I don't, if this is possible, is that they have a lease in good standing.
Yes, and so is it precisely such that their approval or their recertification will be contingent upon them having a lease in good standing, and that they are fully paid in their rent.
I don't know if you want to discuss that particular issue now, but my question is, if you have a commercial tenant, is that part of your requirement when you approve outdoor dining for someone that's either using their own property or using property that's leased from a private owner? Do you put that in? If you don't,
turn on the rent for that space?
yeah, then I don't think you can do it with the town. I would be careful about that. The town is just like any other landlord, quite frankly. But I think that,
Sure, to make everybody on equal footing, so
yeah,
they're not...
I would
yeah.
just be a little careful about that.
Mhm.
I think if they're in default, and we can put a condition in the lease that they comply with, in fact, usually you do, it should be in these, that they comply with all regulations, including the zoning regs. So if we get a notice that they're not in compliance with zoning, then we can declare the lease in default, and if we wanted, we could start eviction proceedings on them, so.
Right.
And likewise, if we just have a condition that they have if they have a current lease for town property, if it's terminated for whatever reason, if they don't have a lease,
I think that...
we can then take action, we can then revoke their outdoor dining because they
Right.
don't have a lease for town property in particular. I would think. Commissioner Parker has...
Hold on.
I know Commissioner Parker does.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Wagner, I'm sorry.
I did have a couple of
Continue, I'm
specific
sorry.
comments. Thanks, on the letter. So first, in the preamble, the statement that the town will lease to a certain party, I think, should be rephrased and state that it is contingent upon approval by the TPZ that the town intends to lease certain property to a certain entity. In the
Well,
preamble.
It's actually part of the actual body. The town
Well, I
council-
understand, I'll get to that in a second. In the first paragraph, term, with regard to this specific One Irish Hound, it states that the lease shall be for the years 2013 and 2014. This use commenced July 25th, 2012. So I think there needs to be some attention at least in the letter of intent here, to recognize that this particular entity has been using town property without a lease for some time. I think there should be some either retroactive language or recognition here that the entity will pay, as they've committed in their letter of intent, to come current on all of their prior use, and in some way recognize that their use did commence July 25th, 2012.
And perhaps in that case, if I can add, there should be language in the lease then that the tenant will indemnify and defend and hold harmless the town for any claims made during the period they were in occupancy back in 2012.
With
You got the
regard to
two-year
this
statute of
specific
limitations
entity, right.
regarding to this specific parcel. So should someone have been injured there last year and now bring a claim, there was no lease in effect, we can add defense and indemnification language
Yeah.
to the new lease.
Right. I mean, there's got to be some
Just a-
retroactive language here that
make that clear.
recognizes that this entity, went through an entire year of using town property without a proper lease, and that all of the terms and conditions that would generally be applicable to someone having leased the land would retroactively apply, in this circumstance to protect the town. So in paragraph 4, I think that should be rephrased to say that the town's intention and not obligation to lease the property is contingent upon approval of our TPZ. And then in paragraph 5, states that Chelsea shall submit detailed drawings of the proposed lease area. I think that in any consideration by the town of what lease to enter into for what space, I'm thinking that you should be looking at a map when you're considering the letter of intent, just to possibly even attach the map or whatever it is that the town is making subject to the letter of intent. I mean, that would seem to make sense to me. And then in paragraph 7, paragraph 6, that possession is not granted upon the execution of the lease, but add a clause at the end that possession can be taken upon execution of the lease and TPZ approval. I think it's a joint function.
Well, we're not going to execute the lease until TPC approves it. That's what this says. It's contingent on your approval. So then, if you approve it tonight, then we'll go ahead and we'll draw up a lease, and it'll be executed and they can take possession. That's the intent of this.
Right. I understand that. I'm talking about now for future letters. That comment was not necessarily for this particular entity. But in future letters, I think that would be clear. We're trying to be clear with our residents and the businesses in town about what this actually says and what it actually means. And then in paragraph 7, with regard to this particular entity, that the lease would not be active until all arrears are paid in full and that they remain current with their lease. I mean, we talked about some of those issues just before, but, those are some of my comments with regard to
Thank you.
this form that was put in front of us. And it's not signed yet by the town. I mean, I know that in the letter of intent, the applicant here submitted the document signed by them, your presence here today, stating that, you hadn't quite signed it yet because you were coming here tonight to talk about it.
Actually,
I get that.
we signed it this afternoon. I thought we delivered it to staff.
Yeah, He's got the sign.
We have.
Oh, we do have a signed
We do
copy.
have signed copies, we
It's
got
fully
this afternoon.
signed.
So this letter's now been signed,
Yes.
it's been in front of us?
Again, just to be absolutely clear, the reason this wasn't signed well in advance so you could have this with your packet, because I was out 4 days last week.
Right, and
Otherwise,
we have our
It would have been signed at that point, so I
Sure.
don't, there was, other than my not being here, that's the only reason it wasn't signed. The
Sure.
intent was to do that.
Right,
Thank you.
so, that's it, thank you.
Commissioner Parker, I think it's a microphone.
Again, thank you both for coming. I will let you lawyers work out the fine language of this. I think it's a fine idea. It does raise for me, I have two questions. It raises the question of state leases, because my understanding is that people on the post road, when they have outdoor dining on the sidewalk, pay a lease fee to the state. Are you aware of that, and how is that handled?
I'm aware they don't pay us.
Yeah, you're aware they don't pay us. I mean, does this obligate us in any way to clarify the state situation? I was not aware of it.
I can answer
that.
Huh?
Commissioner White can answer that.
We have no examples of outdoor dining on state property.
The outdoor dining we have on the post road is not on state property because while it would appear to be the sidewalks, some of those sidewalks are beyond the state right-of-way and are in fact on the property owned by the businesses like Molto, like
Yeah.
the Fairfield U bookstore, like Chelsea.
When
not Chelsea,
When Molto violated his assigned space, he evidently was paying a fee to the state for this space that he was improperly using.
No, I think he wanted the state property and did not have a lease for it, but expanded.
He made an application, Malto made an application to expand their patio, which would have encroached onto the state property with
Okay.
a lease, but this commission denied that expansion proposal.
Okay. And then my other question for the gentleman here is that I was wondering, I'm not quite clear, when we approve outdoor dining, which gives the restaurants a larger number of tables and more business, do you then collect a larger tax from them in terms of the per table, the square footage being used?
We collect tax from the property owner. Restaurants are typically tenants.
Okay.
All right, so at some point, the tax for the property owner is based on the revenues and expenses that that business generates. It's not like residential sales where it's all based on comparable sales
Mhm.
or comparable, so that comparable sales generate the assessment for the properties. In the commercial sector, it's based on a P&L, revenues, expenses, what money they make, and the assessment comes from that.
Okay.
So
So
in a long way, yes, the more money they make, the higher the taxes, but it's not a direct year-to-year kind of item.
okay.
And arguably, if they have outdoor dining, they need more tables and chairs, more personal property, more plates, and that would come in under personal property tax that they have to declare every year as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson?
Yes, I'd like to thank you both for coming. I think this is a really good idea. Actually, Commissioner Wagner and Commissioner Parker asked all my questions. Oh, thank you for coming.
Commissioner Barrett?
I just have one more point to make about encroachments. It's just specifically about Chelsea. I think I mentioned at the last meeting. I dined at Chelsea July 20th, 2012. How do I know that? Because I remember eating there, it was busy, and saying, hey, they've got outdoor dining. I don't recall approving it. I was a little late reading my packet. When I got home and read my packet for the next Tuesday, I find it was on our agenda for July 24th. So they were actually using that even before we approved it under the, so, you know, I mean, we do see a lot of that where people are taking, I mean, that's trespass, isn't it? I mean, so, you know, it's just a point. I'm sure they're not the only ones that kind of assumed an approval.
It also violates their liquor permit.
It also violates the liquor permit.
Other
So,
things.
you know, somehow, you know, with this process, I think we can get a little more rigorous while still trying to embrace the vision of encouraging a vibrant outdoor dining, you know, opportunities in Fairfield.
I mean, it's anecdotal, but when I get together with other first selectmen and mayors, you know, with the typical conversation is, you don't want to go out in your town because all the voters are watching what you do and stuff. So they all look at me and say, hey, Mike, we go out in Fairfield, where do you go?
Yeah, just to kind of sum it up, thank you for coming. I think we have a good procedure to follow on a go-forward basis. And the message is this committee wholly embodies outdoor dining. And we have meetings of zoning chairs periodically from different towns, and I've had some of my colleagues to the affluent communities to our west accuse me of our commission of stealing all their restaurant business, and they've taken what used to be vibrant communities and bringing them up to Fairfield, and you know, it's saying, you got to stop doing that, and all this outdoor dining. You've got all these wonderful restaurants. Everyone comes to Fairfield to eat now. You've got a great downtown that we envy. So I think that we should continue, you know, to encourage our businesses as part of economic development to think about outdoor dining. It's working so well for many businesses.
I mean, it's absolutely, as I'm sure you've all experienced, it's absolutely fun to walk through downtown Fairfield on a Saturday night and have all the outdoor dining. You can feel the buzz, you can feel what's taking place. We had Restaurant Week last year that went over fabulously. We're planning another one for this early October this year. The restaurant owners are chomping at the bit to get started with that. The citizens embraced it. It was really affected the whole town. It really impacted the whole town. And again, I want to give credit to this committee for kind of laying the foundation, laying the groundwork that allowed that to happen.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for the First Selectman or Town Attorney? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to, while you're here, do you want to do Chelsea? No, I think it's going to be a motion to go into executive session, private executive, to discuss the pending litigation with you on a different matter. So thank you. Is there such a motion?
I'll move to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
Commissioner Barrett has moved that we go into private executive session to discuss pending litigation, seconded by Commissioner Jacobs. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention. We're going to take about a 5 to 10 minute maximum break to go talk to the town attorney about some pending litigation we need to discuss tonight. So we'll stand in a brief adjournment. We're back in session. We were in private executive session to discuss pending litigation. Is there a motion we go back into public session?
So moved.
So Commissioner Jacobs has moved. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. I'd recommend that we just skip on the agenda a little bit. Let's leave the frontage access planning discussion until later this evening, since we have public hearing. We can move on to the other matters before us. The first being old business. 201 Fairmont Terrace, request of M&R Associates for 100% release of a $23,390 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone. Public hearing 5/28/13. Present Leclerc, Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, and Parker. And I would note that Commissioner Alessi is on tonight for Commissioner Kennelly. Commissioner Kennelly? He indicated for the record that he's listened to the tapes. Yeah.
Yes, just really quick, after a public hearing held on February 8th, 2011, the TPZ Commission approved this two-lot subdivision on February 15th, 2011. The bonded improvements included drainage, street, trees, curbs, aprons, sidewalk, monuments, and site stabilization. As represented at the hearing, we have a report from both the engineering department and the tree warden recommending release of the bond.
No.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to release the bond.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrett has moved to release the bond. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jacobs has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of release of bond for 201 Fairmont Terrace, request of M&R Associates for 100% release of a $23,390 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, zoning regulation amendment, application of the TP&Z Commission to amend sections 2.12, 32.1, and 32-8 of the zoning regulations for floodplain management. Public hearing 5/28/13. Present Leclerc, Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, and Parker.
Okay, if you recall, last time, these amendments are required as new FEMA flood insurance rate maps are becoming effective, so to stay current with those regulations, we need to adopt them by reference into our regulations and make two minor tweaks to some sections that FEMA has updated. And again, these are requirements for us to stay current with the National Flood Insurance regs.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Jacobs has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of zoning regulation amendments, application of the TPZ Commission to amend sections 2.12, 32.1, and 32-8 of the zoning regulations for floodplain management, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, they carry unanimously. Next item, zoning regulation amendment, application of the TPZ Commission to amend sections 2.8.2, 11.7, and 31.2.35 of the zoning regulations regarding post-Sandy recovery. Public hearing 5/28/13. Present Commissioners Leclerc, Barretts, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, and Parker. Mr. Wynn?
Okay, quickly again, these are three sections that we are recommending changes to as we continue to deal with post-Sandy issues, mainly with regarding to elevating homes that were substantially damaged. So these three amendments would help that. I can get into them in more detail if you wish, but I detailed them for you at the hearing last time.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Is there a motion on this? Thank you. Commissioner Wagner's moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Barretts has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of zoning regulation amendments, application of the TP&Z Commission to amend section 2.8.2, 11.7, and 31.2.35 of the zoning regulations regarding post-Sandy recovery, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, 1262 Post Road, special permit application of 1262 Post Road Holdings, LLC, pertaining to additions and renovations to an existing building in the Center Design District. Public hearing 5/28/13. Expiration date August 1/13. Present Commissioners Leclerc, Barretts, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, and Parker. Mr. Devonchik.
Yes, sir. As outlined by the chairman, the proposal is to redevelop and expand an existing post office building located on 1262 Post Road in Fairfield Center. This property is located in the Center Design Business District and is 1.14 acres in size. The proposal is to expand the current 10,000 square foot office building and convert it for a retail use comprising 10,400 square feet of floor area and a restaurant comprising of 4,600 square feet of floor area. Access will essentially remain the same. However, the parking area will be revised to serve the retail and commercial development and include a dedicated internal walkway for pedestrian access to the building, which was described in site plans that were represented at the hearing. A portion of the existing building will be retained and a one-story addition will be added to the rear. The central portion of the post office facade of the present post office building will be retained as per an agreement with the seller and the United States Postal Service, which is described by the architects of the application. We require parking for the proposed restaurant, which includes 1,800 square feet of patron floor area and an outdoor seating area of 150 square feet is 45 parking spaces. We require parking for the retail component would be 28 cars. That would be a total of 73 spaces for the two proposed uses. As represented at the hearing, the parking provided on the site would include 59 spaces. The ZBA on April 4th, 2013 approved the variance reducing required parking for the proposed spaces from 73 to the proposed 59 parking spaces. And Mr. Chairman, this is what was represented at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Devonchik. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Jacobs has moved to approve. Commissioner, is there a second? Commissioner Jacobson. Oh, what are you doing? Are you making a motion?
I would like to.
I thought you did. Commissioner Jacobs.
I would like to make a motion to approve with conditions. The condition being that since it is a historic building and since the architect did a beautiful job keeping the tone of the architecture through the rest of the facility, that the sign plan that comes in also become through the same architect.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Jacobs, you probably should begin.
We've had buildings that have been beautiful buildings, and then they go to a sign company for their sign plan, and the buildings get destroyed. This is a historic building. I believe that, Friends and Associates did an incredible job with this addition to the building, and that I would hope that we could make the condition that they also be brought in on the sign plan, which is required to come before us. The other way of looking at it is we could look at it and say, there was no sign plan, therefore it's a deficient application.
Commissioner Suter?
I think for us to require the applicant to choose a particular vendor to make their signs is not fair to the applicant. As good as the architect may be, I'm not sure that he's an expert in signs. He may not even want to do the signs. But I think that's a choice that should be left to the applicant. We can certainly urge the applicant to consult with his architect to see if the architect will undertake that, but I don't think we should make it a condition of approval.
Commissioner Jacobson?
I think this is a wonderful application. I think it'll make a good addition to the downtown, and I would like to see attractive signs put up. I would have no objection to requiring them to put up attractive signs. I'd like to hope that they will do that because they've done such a great job on the rest of the building in terms of having LEED certification and all the other requirements. So either way, I'll vote for it.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. So I agree with Commissioner Suter. I don't think that we can or should call out and require a particular applicant to utilize a private party for a specific purpose. The applicant gave us assurances at the public hearing that they were working with this architect and that they intended to do so, for the sign plan. They have to come back with a sign plan. Our regulations are what they are, and it's up to us to approve or deny any follow-up sign plan that they come forward with. My gut reaction is that it would be inappropriate for us to condition the allowance on use of a particular architect. Fabulous application. Love the building. Totally support it. Jansen did a wonderful job. So, but I just think that's inappropriate.
Commissioner Lessie?
I agree with Commissioner Wagner and Commissioner Suter. I love the application, but I don't think it's for this commission to tell applicants who they should and should not use, when doing business. We'll have to approve a sign, we'll approve it, we'll disapprove it, we'll like it, we won't like it, but who we tell them to use, I don't think that's what we want to get involved with as a commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Barron?
I agree, we can't tell them who to use, but I think the important thing is that the sign somehow be consistent with the building is what we're really trying to do. And I look in our architectural and community standards regs, and it doesn't really talk about signs. So our sign regs is what would apply there. And we have seen cases where you had a building that was architected well, and then a sign plan comes in and it meets our sign requirements, so we approve it. So if there was some way to word it, so that any sign plan would be, consistent with the style of the building, that would be good. I don't know if we could force them who to use, but.
Commissioner Wagner?
So there was some representation at the public hearing that the sale of the property was conditioned upon them maintaining the facade.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was it, the historical significance of the facade. So perhaps some tie-in there could be made.
Suggestion.
I think we have a suggestion from staff.
Well, an overall sign plan is ultimately required, so perhaps something of the nature of an overall sign plan shall be required that is sensitive to the historic nature of the building. Hopefully communicates what you're trying to communicate without being specific as to who ultimately does the design.
My only comment would be, regardless of what you're trying to do, the commission's starting to recommend specific vendors and specialists to do work, I think creates problems on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. It's a slippery slope we're entering. We may as well suggest that they retain a certain lawyer to come back for the application for the sign plan. There's no difference, really. Think about that. Several are standing up in the audience now, volunteering.
Right.
So, we could, I think the point is clear, if we could suggest that they consult with their architect on the side plan. We don't even know the architect has any interest in designing a sign. Some of them don't, and they don't really care, or have the expertise. So, I just, maybe if Commissioner Jacobs would consider amending his motion.
And what will it be amended to?
We approve the item.
Approved, subject to them coming, back with an
It's
appropriate
clear they
sign
have to come
plan
back with a
that
sign plan
is
and...
consistent with the historical
right.
nature of the building.
Contingent upon them returning with a sign plan that is sensitive to the historical nature of the building.
Right. As long as it said like that, I would have agreed to the change in the conditions. The reasoning before this is there are a case in point of a beautiful building on Black Rock that had a wonderful raised area above with beautiful woodwork and then a fluorescent colored plastic sign hung on it and absolutely destroyed the building visually. I would not like to see that happen on this building downtown, where we have a really historic building and a chance for a really beautiful development that could be tainted with inappropriate or how should I word this, insensitive signage.
Does the second consent to the...
Yes, I do.
Is there any discussion on the motion currently before us? Again, I think this is a great reuse of the building. It's exciting that they are taking the portion of it that doesn't match the non-symmetrical portion of the front and removing it. So if you look at the old building, it balances like it should have been, and it was intended to be when it was built. We have some great new outdoor dining coming online again with this application, and a nice patio area to the left of the building looking at it, which is, it's nice that they've incorporated that right into the building. I think that's going to be a nice asset for downtown Fairfield. That's a good design. It's frankly a nice design, the whole building, the way it's been set up with the retail and the restaurant use. Commissioner Sutter?
Yeah, could you just restate the motion before we vote?
The motion is for approval with the following condition, that the applicant come back with a sign plan that is sensitive to the historic nature of the building. Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. We have next the compliance calendar. The first is 1243 Post Road, compliance application of Finn Restaurant to expand an outdoor dining patio in a center design district.
Okay, this was held over from last time. There was some concern raised about the 6-foot width between this proposed expanded patio in the adjacent building. You asked us to get some feedback from the town fire marshal, which we did. There are no fire code issues. The applicant actually responded with a revision to the plan to create a 3'6" opening in that low screen wall. And while fire code wouldn't require that to be there, it would be preferred. So the applicant has responded to some of what they heard from you with a revised plan to create an opening there, and the 6-foot clear between the low screening and the adjacent building was adequate to suit the fire marshal.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item? Is there a motion?
Okay.
Let's call for a motion.
We should discuss it, right? I'll move to approve it.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Sutter?
Yeah, just continuing on my comments from last week, we still have the same situation before us. A restaurant with an existing patio that was later built over by the owner of the building, so that there's a ceiling above the patio. And then subsequently they asked us for permission to enclose the patio so they could have winter seating for people who wanted to wait before they got inside the restaurant. And the enclosure has sliding glass panels. So it's not a permanent part of the building. It's still a patio. In their present application, they've applied for permission to, quote, expand, unquote, the patio. But what they're really asking for is a second patio. They have 200 square feet now. The requested addition of the second patio would make it 320 square feet, which is a lot of patio. But in addition to really asking for a second patio, which no other restaurant in town has, they are, in my mind, to some degree encroaching on the building across the walkway. The fire marshals found no fire problems for the other building, 1261 Post Road. But that still does not deal with the issues of access to the elevator by people in wheelchairs and people making deliveries, both by hand trucks and of furniture. There's only a 6-foot width between the wall of the building and the barrier, the low barrier of this proposed second patio. Any deliveries or wheelchairs or other large arrivals to that elevator lobby will come in very close quarters to the people who are dining on the outer rim of the tables. There's a potential for an accident. It's also a very narrow space. It's very hard to maneuver in. I think it impacts the safety and welfare of the people who occupy and visit the building across the way, 1261 Post Road. For all these reasons, I'm still opposed to this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs?
And tonight, Mr. Suter and I agree. I see this as creep. We have lots of issues with creep. They had a patio. They asked it to be enclosed. We did. Now they want it more. So they keep coming back for more. They had one. That's what they get. I would not approve this.
Commissioner Jacobson?
I went down and measured the distance. I didn't see the site. I agree. I think it is encroachment, and I won't support this application.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of compliance application 1243 Post Road, application of Finn Restaurant to expand an outdoor dining patio in the Center Design District, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Abstentions? Item fails. Next item, 1427 Kings Highway compliance application of Keystone Novelties for a temporary tent sale in a design commercial district. Mr. Wendt.
Okay, this is a currently vacant lot between the entry drive to the Metro Center and the ramp up to the bridge. What's proposed here is a temporary tent sale for fireworks. Historically, similar applications of this nature, whether they be for this or for Easter flowers or Valentine sales, have generally not been supported by this commission. Section 12.6.1 of the regulations, the design business district regs, requires that all merchandise for sale be in an enclosed building unless outside display is specifically approved by this commission. So you would need to make a finding that outside display of merchandise is particularly appropriate here in order to approve this. But historically, regardless of what's for sale, I don't want to make it about what's for sale. This commission hasn't been overly supportive of these types of temporary sales, whether they be for flowers or for forever. But you would need to make a finding in favor or against Section 12.6.1, which requires, unless you see fit otherwise, all merchandise be within an enclosed building.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to deny it.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Barrett. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobs. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Barrett.
We need to get these things on the table. It's already 9:25, so I would not be supportive of this application. Yeah, I mean, I do recognize it's for, the only thing I was positive, it's for a limited period of time. It's for, whatever, 2 weeks or so. So I understand this, but in the past, the commission hasn't been supportive of these outdoor, and this is a tent. This is like putting up some sort of a structure outside. I would, distinguish this from, the other thing we do allow for temporary is like Christmas tree sales, which we have.
Right.
But this is different. It's got the tent. I wouldn't be supportive of that.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying, well, let me back up. The motion is to deny, so if you want this denied, you should vote in favor of the motion. So all in favor of the motion, which is a motion to deny, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the item is denied. Next item, 427 Stilson Road, compliance application of Stilson LLC to establish a retail use hair salon in a portion of an existing building in a designed commercial district.
All right, this building is, if you're traveling north on Stilson Road approaching Black Rock Turnpike, it's on your right-hand side, right before you get to the Wells Fargo building. You may recall that several months ago, an overall sign plan was approved for this building. There was a general office on the first floor, was a electrical union that had a bunch of space there. They're leaving, and a hair salon is looking to occupy some space on the first floor and some space in the basement. The basement floor area had previously been approved for medical office, and with the conversion of general office to hair salon, which requires a retail parking, there's an increase in the draw or requirement for parking, such that they will be 4 spaces short of their requirement. In order to make up for that shortfall, they are going to revise their basement plan to eliminate 800 square feet of space down there, which is permitted under the regulations. The basement areas used solely for mechanical equipment or storage don't factor into the parking calculation, so they're looking to make that adjustment by eliminating 800 square feet in the basement. So the parking will comply upon doing so, but the thrust of this particular application is to change the use of a portion of the first floor in the basement from office space to a retail hair salon.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Wagner's moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobson seconded. Any discussion?
Seems to be a technical, adjustment to the space that they need to make accommodation for the use, and seems like it complies with our regulations. I think we should grant it without undue discussion.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion, undue or not? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, 111 Black Rock Turnpike, compliance application of Invest 2 to establish an indoor recreational facility in a portion of an existing building in a designed commercial district.
Okay, this building is directly across the street from BJ's. It's currently occupied in 50% of the building has got Planet Fitness in it. The other half of the building for several years has been a wholesale paper company, Pick Quick Papers. They are leaving. They've got a prospective tenant in here for an additional indoor recreation facility, similar to, and there's an extensive packet that was submitted showing examples of a couple of their existing locations elsewhere, similar to a My Gym, if you're familiar with that type of space. We're basically looking for the other 50% of the building also to be indoor recreational facility. There are 130 total parking spaces available on this site, which is one more than what the floor area would require, so it's in compliance with the parking. So it's a change in use from a wholesale paper goods to an indoor recreation facility.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Jacobs moved
Move to approve.
to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobson is seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobson?
I think this is a great use for the building. I also have to say, I had a lot of fun looking at your application. I love the pictures of little kids and the colors and stuff.
It was a very thorough
I approve it. I
application.
think it's a great use.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission?
Yeah, I would agree too, for a compliance application, this really gave us an idea of what it was going to look like, what they were going to use it for, so I commend the applicant for the application. I have no issues with it other than, the signs here shouldn't be like the signs that go up on that new restaurant on the Post Road. But that aside, I think it's fine, and it's a really good use for the building.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of application of 111 Black Rock Turnpike to establish an indoor recreational facility in a portion of an existing building signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, 85 Mill Plain Road, compliance application of 85 Pond Mill LLC to establish an indoor recreational facility in a portion of an existing building.
Okay, this application is for yet another indoor rec facility here at Sportsplex, a outfit called Bar Method, exercise routines with respect to ballet bars. That's where the name comes from. There's 2,044 square feet here, which is almost completing the tenancy of this facility. There's only 912 square feet remaining. This commission recently, after a hearing, went back and reduced, after an analysis, reduced the parking draw for the previously approved indoor rec spaces from 3 spaces per thousand to 2.7 per thousand, with the idea that, that was certainly warranted given the census of parking that the applicant provided, but also with the understanding that going forward, it would allow them to lease up the remaining few thousand square feet. So that is the ratio that this application also proposes, is 2.7 parking spaces per thousand square feet.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Wagner seconded. Any discussion?
Sure.
Commissioner Wagner.
Sure. Shell Properties come back to us every single time they've had a new use to fill out their space. The ratio of 2.7 here is consistent with 90% of the square footage that we've approved previously. It's the last space that is available, I think we should approve it. It's done. The good news here is that it's done.
Well, there's still 900 square feet out there, but it's this close.
It's in an equipment closet, I mean.
We also have the restaurant that hasn't ever opened that we approved, that Brick Oven
The
restaurant.
NOLA, you mean, the NOLA?
Yeah, it was one of the earlier ones we approved that never opened yet. I don't know what they're calling
Right,
it.
well, I don't know, if it, look, there is one here that's, the NOLA restaurant that's approved at 8.9, that has 35 spaces allocated to it. The parking lot is not a good scene, okay? It's just not a good scene. But, he's done the studies, he's come back, reported to us that there haven't been, accidents and things like that. It's last 6 spaces, Bar Method. I'm going to support the application for that reason.
Commissioner Barrett?
I don't know if the applicant's here tonight, but I just really applaud the applicant. When I look at all the approved uses, I say the diversity of recreational opportunities they brought to Fairfield is just tremendous. I mean, they brought things I never even heard of, like parkour and Pilates.
I had the same reaction when I looked at this list, and now you go back to this and you say, holy mackerel, right? Sportsplex, we got rock climbing, we got fencing, we've got gymnastics, hockey, yoga, soccer, laser tag. So I support the application.
Thank you. Maybe just remind the applicant 2 things when you inform him of our vote. The first is he was going to address the driveway onto North Pine Creek. think he was going to fix where the concrete had crumbled there, so people don't make that illegal turn. And if you can have him remind his tenant, Hot Yoga, not to put their signs up, number one, all over town, and number two, not on his own property as well, where it's a problem for that tenant. So, they must have ordered quite a few. So.
They're cheaper when you buy 250.
Apparently. Mr. Decker has access to a large town truck.
We got a truck full of those. So you're fixed where the concrete apron is broken on the turn there?
Yeah, the turn there. And we should also thank Mr. Kleban when you speak to him on any of his applications. He did do the change we discussed. It actually came out nicer than I thought it would on Black Rock Turnpike by the EMS Shaw's Plaza. That low dip, they not only leveled it out, they made a different type of concrete in the middle, making it clear which way the turn is. It actually came out quite nice. This weekend.
That was a long time coming, not so much on their part, but it just took the state forever to give them a permit to do that. So that was actually a condition of the Webster Bank drive-through application.
That's a nice idea. The commissioner should take a look at that. It's a lane where you can only make a right-hand turn lane out, and you're not even looking at the signs. You know what you're supposed to do the way they, I don't know if it's textured, if you call it, whatever they did to the concrete in the middle. I think the textured concrete may even be elevated. It's very clear which way it's made to go. It came out quite nice.
And they made the pitch much lower so you don't bottom
You don't bottom
out
out.
the bottom of your car.
Correct. So that was a nice change that they made at our request, so thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of compliance application of 85 Mill Plain Road, 85 Pond Mill LLC to establish an indoor recreational facility, a portion of an existing building, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Next compliance application, 1326 Post Road, a.k.a. 12 Uncool Place, compliance application of Irish Hound LLC for seasonal outdoor dining.
Before we get into this, I've got a couple. First of all, I have 3 executed copies of the letter of intent that you discussed earlier tonight.
The executed copy, that is the same copy that we received in a partially executed format.
Correct.
In our package. Thank you.
Secondly, I'm going to hand these down to Pat to pass out. As was referenced earlier, there was some question about the location of a utility pole and a tree on either side of the proposed seating here, so the applicant has revised the plan to more to show those two things, the utility pole on the left-hand side and the tree well that lines up between the buildings to show where those relative positions are to the relative to the proposed seating here. And so there's still 7'3" clear to the front of the enclosure, and by scale, it scales 7 feet diagonally clear from the edge of the seating to the tree well. So while, depending on the angle that you look at it from the street, it can be deceiving in terms of what the clear space is here, but they've attempted to show that clearly on this site plan to show you what the clear space is. Unless you've got questions, I don't have anything else.
Yeah, so again, I'm looking at the drawing. We're looking at the drawing labeled A16. We can see something is circled with a 2 over A16, which shows the concrete, the proposed outdoor patron area. It appears, so we're clear, 15 feet wide. And then the dimension, so it comes out 6.5 feet from the existing building, to call it that, the facade of the building. And there's an additional 7.3 feet from the end of the proposed outdoor dining to the curb line of the street. And do we have a measurement, again, from the corner of the outdoor dining, which would be the southwest corner of the outdoor dining space, to the tree cutout or tree island?
It's not dimensioned here. I don't know, it would be overlapping the other dimension, but it scales. This is a 1 and 20 inch
But it is scaled, so we can run the
So
scale.
I scale it as approximately maybe a hair over 7 feet, but 7 feet clear it looked to me.
You're actually right. If that's 7 feet 3 inches, if we scale this again, you're correct. I see. So this is drawn to scale, so it is a little bit over 7.3 is the three-dimensional, dimension. And in the second drawing, we have the first floor construction plan. I guess it has the opposite orientation, so you have to turn that upside down, I think. You want to put the orientations together of them, it looks like. And that's just a closer version of that, without the tree drawn in it. So it's really the second one, the A16, I suppose we should look at. Excuse me, that has a tree island, and also has the UI pole as well.
Right.
Drawn in, well, the other one's...
The other thing is that there's a little blow-up of the space on the right that's colored. The area in green is actually part of the leasehold property of the applicant, and the area in lavender is the proposed area that's to be leased from the town. So it's not the entirety of it's the majority of the seating area, but it's not the entirety of the seating area.
And the blow-up doesn't show still doesn't show the tree, but it at least shows the pole, for some reason. Thank you. Is there a motion on this? Again, is there a motion on this, one way or the other? One more call, and we'll move on. If there's no motion, does anyone care to move on this? Okay. Hearing no motion, we can't act on it. So we'll go to the next item on the agenda for now, which is public hearing. We'll keep on the table, again, there's no motion on this, we'll keep the outdoor frontage access discussion pending for later in the meeting. Public hearing, 1410 South Pine Creek Road, request of Calvin Munson for 100% release of a $4,985 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an R3 zone. Mr. Wendt. Oh, you're just reconfiguring the room, I'm sorry.
The microphone for Mr. Munson. What are you doing?
Good evening, Mr. Munson. Please see your name and address for the record.
My name is Calvin Munson. I'm a resident of 1410 South Pine Creek Road. The address for the bond is actually for the improvements on 1390 South Pine Creek Road.
Okay. We don't have any report from engineering. Do we have a report from engineering on this?
You did. It was in your packet from last time.
Oh, from last time.
If you recall, we held this over, no period.
All right, no period, okay. And we do have a report for the record last time. Now, the interesting, this is engineering has 1410, but Mr. Munson indicated this is not 1410, it's 1390. Engineering is talking about they've inspected 1410 and everything has been installed. Is there a discrepancy with the address? Let me ask Mr. Munson, is 1390 and 1410 two different houses?
They're adjoining properties. It was a subdivision. It was property that was subdivided from 1410, but the improvements basically are in front of 1390.
So 1410, where was the concrete curb, sidewalk, and pedestrian ramp installed, at 1410 or 1390 or both?
They basically terminate before you even arrive at the property line of 1410. So they're basically all front on 1390. But maybe the application initially was for 1410. That was just a description of it. But the actual improvements are in front of 1390.
Wasn't this a garage that was being enlarged and renovated or something?
There's a long history with this property. It initially was one large lot on which a home was built at 1410 and a foundation for a potential garage was constructed. The property was subsequently subdivided into two separate lots in a second home constructed on 1390. Mr. Munson is correct. The title on the agenda refers to 1410 because that was the property that was ultimately subdivided that led to the bond. There's one common driveway for these two. One of the conditions of the subdivision is that there be one and only one driveway access for the two lots, so they share a common driveway that crosses over the front lot, which is 1390. So the improvements were done in front of 1390, but it was all with respect to the subdivision of 1410.
Thank you. Sure.
Mr. Went, I have a question for staff. When was this approved? You have a date of the subdivision approved?
I don't have the file with me, but it was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Or
I don't
more.
even remember this, so that's why.
10 years. It was a while
It'd
ago.
be more than 10 years.
It's been a while ago, Mr. Munson?
I think it was '06.
Was it? Okay, then maybe not that long ago. I just don't remember. Recall this.
'06 or very early '07.
So is this something that just was completed and bond?
It was completed in the fall,
This past fall?
yes.
Okay. And we have a report from engineering that all work's been completed?
We do.
All right.
Yeah, the only question was the engineering had a different address, and we're just trying to make it clear that it's, the whole property's been done, everything's finished. Engineering referred to it as 1410. Mr. Munson said it's actually 1390. So we're just trying to clarify, it's not two different...
Just a ballpark, you certainly know where you are. If you travel south on South Pine Creek Road before the beach, there's a public parking area for the beach. Mr. Munson's driveway is the last driveway before that parking area, and the two lots share a common driveway
On the end.
that intersects with South Pine Creek Road northerly, just northerly of that public parking area.
That's helpful, thank you. Okay. Sure. Okay. Thank you, do you have anything else, Mr. Munson? No, we're good. Thank you.
That's it? Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment? Hearing none, so we'll close the public hearing on 1410 South Pine Creek Road. We're done with the public hearing portion of the meeting. We'll reconfigure again in a second. We have two things left on the agenda we haven't addressed. One is frontage access as part of our planning discussion. The other is the one item that there was no motion made. Move it.
Back in executive
Back in
session?
executive session again, yes. So we can take up with the planning now, if you like, frontage access. I think there's been some back and forth drafts that we've seen. We have the 61113 draft of the lot frontage access, which was prepared by the staff. As you remember at the last meeting, we discussed a few things. One was the Darien ordinance, to refer to it as that. And Commissioner Jacobson brought that up. We ultimately we're making a recommendation that the RTM take that up as an ordinance. That's been communicated to the RTM from the Commission. We also discussed some changes to the, as recommended by the Forestry Committee and as recommended by the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee. Mr. Wendt and the staff are working on those regulations. We can have them hopefully for our next meeting to get them down for a quick public hearing so we can discuss those. This was another item. This was the item that was brought up by, I think it was Mr. Jacobs. Commissioner Jacobs may have brought this up first, I believe, talking about, with rear lots, changing the current regulations that require 20 feet access to the frontage of any lot to be equal to the required lot square within the district where that particular lot is located.
Before you get too far with that, I've got a revision. I'm just
Another
going to
revised, sure.
hand these down.
And for the record, is it stated, what is it stated at the top?
It's same today's date for discussion.
Okay.
But it's labeled draft 2.
Draft 2, thank you.
So, not to get ahead of you, but what we attempted to do here was in both the access and rear lot and access and frontage requirement is to increase, the intent here is to increase the lot frontage from a 20-foot requirement across the board to be equal to that, the square that's required. The second draft is that it became apparent after further review on our part of the first draft is that we had left out the provision in the 1 acre and 2 acre zones that allow for the potential for private roads. Again, that's discretionary on your part. There are 6 different sections of the subdivision regulations that relate to private streets in the discretion that you have to create them, and then the standards for their construction is a little bit different than a public street, and they're only permitted in the AA and AAA zones. So what the second draft does is it essentially the same as the first draft, but we've added language that if the district is AA or AAA, then that lot may also have the required frontage on a private street pursuant to the subdivision regulations. So we didn't believe it was the intent, correct us if we're wrong, to eliminate the possibility of a private road which exists in the 1 and 2 acre zones. It's your discretion, and there's, like I said, there's a fairly lengthy provisions in 6 different locations in the subdivision regulations that we have to modify. So we went back and looked at that and allowed for that provision to remain. But whether it be public or private, the intent here is to increase the lot frontage required in any residential district from, again, the 20-foot across the board to whatever the lot square width in the zone that's required. So that's going to range now from 50 feet to 200 feet. So in a AAA zone, whether it be public or private, the minimum frontage on a road now would be 200 feet if this were to be approved. So all the other language that's underlined and in brackets would be eliminated because that, gives reference to these private 20-foot access ways that, with the 200-foot frontage now would not be necessary or permitted.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I want to thank Mr. Wen for his hard work on this, and I'm very pleased with how it came out.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
So what's the next step? I'm sorry, I jumped in there. So, Commissioner Barrett, I apologize.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think this is very positive. I also think this is going to need a public hearing, a full vetting. It's a big change, and, I think when you put the purpose down there, it's to reduce the impact of new subdivision lots on the built improved route. I think if you look at some built subdivisions and apply this rule, you'd see a major difference where, where maybe somebody got 5 lots around a circle, they'd only be able to get 3. I think of the zone where I live, the A zone, where now you have 20 feet, you need a 75-foot frontage. So you're going to need, you're not going to be able to have so many, pie-shaped lots, and I think that's our intent, I believe.
Right. It will certainly have the impact on a new street cul-de-sac situation there will be less lots as a result. And it will also be more difficult to establish a rear lot because, the frontage required is the same as the front lot, so you'd need a wider width lot to do it. I guess conceptually, if you have a 200-foot frontage, it could narrow down to something less than 200 feet to get to the rear, but you'd still need to have 200 feet of frontage in order to do it. So, I don't know that you're going to eliminate rear lots completely, but going from 20 feet of frontage to 200 feet of frontage is going to be a substantial difference.
So some applications we've heard recently, or in the past few years, we should think of it, and those are good examples, especially ones that have been approved or denied or whatever. You can go back and look at some of the maps and see what some of the implications would be. I think of the one on Sasko Hill too. Is there any litigation pending on that one?
There is.
There is. Okay, I can't talk about that then. But that was an application where there was a 20-foot frontage in a AA zone.
Okay, but I think to answer Matt's procedure, where do we go from here? I think the discussion we had at a couple of planning meetings was, how do we codify this? And this was our draft to do that. If you think this is the appropriate step, then next for us would be to refer this out and then schedule a hearing for us to present it formally and allow public comment.
So does that need a motion?
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there a motion to refer this out along with the other 2 items we referred out last week? Yeah. 2 weeks ago?
Moved.
Commissioner Jacobs is so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jacobson is seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a question. Which draft are we referring to?
Well, that was mine. Are we talking about draft 2?
Yeah, I believe,
are there any issues with
Jacobs
respect to
moving
that?
on the one you just handed out, the draft 2 that addresses the AA and AAA zones. Yeah. Excellent job again to the staff. Thank you, is my comment. And I think this will preserve the character of the neighborhoods as we envision them and prevent a lot of stretches that have been made to our regulations in certain projects and on certain properties. So thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Commissioner Sutter, and then Commissioner Jacobs.
You're asking for discussion on this particular matter.
Let's move to
Yes.
refer it now.
Let's Commissioner Sutter, I'm sorry.
He wasn't with the motion.
Clarify what the motion is.
The motion is to refer this, it's going to go to public hearing, but first we have to go to the...
Right, but I'm taking that motion as a recommendation of public
Yeah.
hearing.
Right.
It's gotta go to the surrounding towns, the Greater
Right.
Bridgeport Regional Planning
Regional
Agency.
RCA, that's right.
GBRC.
All the changes there.
Yeah, sorry, I know I got the acronym wrong.
Oh, no, actually, it was changed, I apologize.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway.
Commissioner Jacobs had a question, I think? No. Is there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, as the motion has been made to refer this out, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Carries unanimously. Thank you. I think that...
There's a supplemental matter if you choose to
Oh, we have a
entertain it.
supplemental, thank you.
And we have any discussion on Gateway?
Sure. We're still having a planning discussion. Absolutely. Gateway, Commissioner Jacobs.
Well, I was just hoping we would move forward with the Gateway discussion of taking our downtown regs and putting them, expanding them out towards the Westport line. I believe we need to make a decision as how far we want to go and not just keep kicking the can down the road so that we get something.
I have, if you remember, some time ago, there is a map that we have that's in my office that outlines a recommended area for the amendments. It essentially is the zone line that exists now. However, it does also include which the majority of that is design commercial right now. It does include, though, a large piece of property that's industrial, which is the Exide. Frank, to cut to the chase, the big decision you're going to have to make is, do you want to change that zone now, or do you want to wait till there's an application to you that better defines what is being proposed for the city?
Can we be doing our change as an overlay, so we would not be changing the underlying zone, and just put these requirements as an overlay out towards the Westport line? Therefore, we'd be keeping our options open on the Exide site.
This is, right, I mean, I think you might want to discuss it a little more. It's 6-1, I mean, you could do it that way, create a new overlay zone, but, like, again, the majority of the property that we're looking at is design commercial now. It would just be an amendment to your design commercial zone in that section. It would be like a new design commercial zone. The overlay, I mean, you can do that and just allow the Exide property to remain industrial until such time as they want to develop it. Then you would zone change the property to design commercial. I don't think you'd want the overlay, because depending on how we use overlays now, you would maintain the industrial zone that's there. The way our overlay works now is it actually adds more permitted uses to the property. It doesn't eliminate the underlying zone. So I still think you might want to just eliminate that industrial zone property. So I mean, I think we could do both. We could do what you want. We can take a look at amending the current regulations, creating this new design commercial zone with the attached community and design standards that we have. And as far as the Exide property, which is, I think, is the only, there may be another one, but the only piece of property I think right now is industrial zone. At some future time, if you wanted to apply, or if someone wanted to apply to develop that property, part of that application would be to apply for the design commercial zone that you created, the new gateway zone.
That question.
Commissioner Wagner.
I'm not clear as to why we wouldn't want to just change that in one fell swoop. I mean, it's not our intention, it's not our desire, and I don't think it's in the interest of the town to have that site developed as an industrial property. So why would we just kick
Well,
that can down
I
the
can tell you
road?
why. Or Rich can tell you why.
I don't know why.
It gives you a little more leverage.
Lows.
Because instead of just approving an application based on the standards in your zoning regulations, you would also at first have to approve a zone change and then approve the special permit application to develop the property. It gives you a little more leverage, really.
Leverage?
Yeah.
Makes it sound like
It's more difficult.
I get it, but is it our goal to make things more
I
difficult?
mean, can't separate
If
politics
we
from planning.
develop a set of regulations, that announce what our planning desires are for that geography, then that puts developers and the town and, the citizens on notice of what they can, how they can develop the property. And I gotta tell you, I just kinda doesn't quite sit so well with me to think that we're, doing something to maintain leverage over applicants, like we're trying to hold something in our pockets and all that kind of thing. That doesn't make sense to me. Makes sense that we would go forward with a design, a plan, and we'd rezone it, and we put in regulations that let folks know what's on the map.
That's the decision the commission has to make.
Commissioner Sitter and then Barrett.
I would say the real problem here, as I think people could read maybe between the leaves, pages, is that nobody knows for sure exactly when or how the Exide property is going to be developed. At a minimum, there are going to be significant environmental problems, a huge capital investment, a lot of site preparation, remediation, God only knows what else. So I think it's really sort of premature for us to lock ourselves in any particular situation.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I think we need a meeting, maybe not tonight to discuss it. Maybe I'm dense, but I'm not even clear on what we're doing. I understood the goal would be to apply our architectural standards going out to the west, and we're discussing how far west. I'm just not sure. Are we talking about a new zone? We've got the center design district, we've got a commercial district, we've got neighborhood design, industrial, and some residents. Are we talking about creating a new zone, like something other than what we have, and rezoning those properties to that?
No.
Are we, what's the mechanics of it, regardless of where the line?
We had a meeting on this.
Okay.
And
I must have slept through that part or something.
well, it was a while ago, and it was, the initial intent was to actually create a new design commercial district. Because we weren't going to amend our design commercial district because we have Black Rock, we have Kings Highway, which have their own unique issues as far as commercial development, as does this corridor from the center to Westport. So your decision at that time, although you didn't specify specifics, was, first of all, the uses that you would more want to see in that corridor are the uses that are essentially permitted in our design commercial district. What you did say, though, is really the way it's going to function, the way it's going to look, its usability, its walkability, its drivability. Those were the kind of issues that you really wanted to highlight in this corridor. My point to you at that meeting was, we have done that with our center design district and neighborhood design district through the community and development section, which is a pretty extensive section. It covers everything from pedestrian access to biking to facade renovation. That was the kind of thing you wanted to attach. So what we would have done, the idea was to attach those requirements to our design commercial district with some other adjustments as far as size of buildings and such, and created for a simple description, a design commercial district 2, which would be that corridor area. That is as far as you guys went, okay?
Yeah.
So if the simple answer is, if you agree to that, just attaching our current commercial and design standards to this section that you're going to identify, that we could do that. With some minor revisions. What really the discussion, I don't say halted, but what you thought you were going to have to do some more thinking about is just exactly how you were going to deal with properties that weren't designed commercial now. They were, and that's where it was kind of left the last time we talked.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just finished, that makes sense. I do recall that now, and I do think, if we were just looking at one property, rezoning it to commercial, we think about it. I don't mean to do cautious, I know Mr. Jacobs was, but before we rezone a whole bunch of properties, I don't know what they all are to design commercial. I think we've got to look at what we're doing in
There's an inventory
a lot of detail.
available, we
That's
have
all.
mapping.
And we looked at the map all the way from the Westport line, all the way over to, I think it was like Mill Plain Road, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know that we reached consensus on what the
We didn't.
westerly border should be. There were some suggestions.
Yep, no, I agree.
ranging from Sasko Hill Road to perhaps the Railroad Bridge to perhaps all the way. So it may, as Seth indicated, be prudent to get the maps back out and have a further dialogue around the table rather than trying to, kind of spitball it in this.
Right, I mean, you got some residences there, right?
In between, yes.
Between, yeah.
We should probably have another meeting, we did this with the gate, the Commerce Drive, charrette, is that what we called it?
Charrette.
Charrette.
Yes.
We had a charrette. We should do something
Just call it
similar.
a public hearing, public meeting.
Where we
Town hall
specifically invite, instead of just putting a notice, we get the list out and invite everyone from, the 95 bridge, let's say, to Mill Plain Road. Not necessarily expanding, you get all the constituents to sit down and say, hey, you own this property, let's have a dialogue, and let's
Yeah.
see what they have to say. That could be very useful.
Yeah,
Get
invite
those-
developers, I mean, just throw it open,
Yeah.
I mean.
That was discussed also, and one of the things that we left it with then is you wanted to have some kind of document or idea to not just have them come in. You wanted to kind of come up with some, pretty much what we've just discussed, that we're planning on doing this to this corridor, what do you think?
Yeah,
Let's do that. I think we have enough ideas. Let's talk, I'll talk
We-
to
we-
staff
we-
about
we got
scheduling
ideas.
the invitations
We're
out.
talking
We can
I
do
would
that.
recommend that, again, you don't have to come with specific,
I'll make bullets.
regs at this point, but
No.
just having an opinion of what you think should be done there, consensus of the commission, and then we'd ask people for input on that.
I'll come up with some bullets, I'll coordinate with the staff, and we'll get a special date for doing this in the
Yeah,
next few
and
weeks. Sally, and then Commissioner
Yeah,
Parker,
I-
and then Commissioner Jacobs.
I've been sort of thinking as you've been talking about this, and I think as part of our planning discussion before, one of the reasons for putting something in place, like extending the downtown area, is to stop any development that's too far outside of our vision for the area. And I know that at one point, Commissioner Jacobson and I went to lunch, and we just happened to be going down that section of town, and we were looking at the sound side of the post road, and that area is still possible to develop as a walkable area. The other side of the post road is not, I mean, the way that's configured now. But if we can get something in place to protect, that sound side and the kind of development that takes place between the Westport line and downtown, will be in pretty good shape. And I think that the urgency is in that we don't allow too much to happen without our guidance.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs?
So I don't have to start reading right now, do we have, in our downtown regs, do we have a maximum square footage? We do on our neighborhood design district, but in our...
And if I remember, we weren't thinking, we're not expanding the center design district, and that, from its 5 stories, there's adjusting for parking because it's downtown. No, we really were looking at is maintaining a lot of design requirements that are in
the design, right.
commercial, but just adding the community appearance aspects.
And the parking in the rear, and,
Yes, that's all in that section.
yep.
Okay. Good. I think it's a plan. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, we have a supplemental agenda, which we should talk about, compliance application of 65 Station Street. Do we have any backup on that or anything? What is the supplemental agenda? What is that about? What do we have?
Well, it's an application that we didn't get on the agenda, so they're looking to expand their surface parking lot. You're obviously not required, it wasn't on your initial agenda, it requires a 2/3 vote for you to entertain it, but just that Station Street is the street that runs between Pequot Avenue, goes underneath the railroad tracks at the Southport Railroad Station.
We don't have a map or plan or anything like that.
I have it, I have it in the handout. If you'd rather it go through the normal...
It probably should, so we can, especially, we probably should.
Get on your agenda packet, we'll do that.
I believe we probably should, because we may want to spend some time looking at these and/or going out there. This isn't like a public hearing where it's just going to carry over.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine.
we want to look at it ahead of time and do some site inspection on that. So why don't we just hold that in advance, unless there's a motion. We have one item that was not taken up, so unless someone wants to move that item, the meeting would be concluded.
I mean, I think we need to move, I'll move something. We need to move to table it at least. I mean, that's just something, we don't usually let things die on the agenda, or else it'll just sit there. I mean, we can move to table it, or approve it, or deny it, but, if we're not ready to discuss it, I'll move to table it, just so we can just talk about it, okay?
So you're moving to table 1326 Post Road, AKA 12 Untable Place, compliance application of Irish Hound LLC for seasonal outdoor dining in Center Design District.
I'll move to table it, at least it gets it,
Barrett
motion out
moved
there.
To lay this on the table, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Wagner, a second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Wagner.
So, I'm not quite sure whether I'm ready to, I appreciate the motion, because I'm not quite sure I'm ready yet to vote on this. Look, there's a lot here that, I got a lot of questions about sort of what happened and why and how the representations were made to us that were. Question for staff. The applicant here states that they commenced use of the patio last year in July of 2012, right? Was that for the outdoor use, the outdoor dining that's the presently subject of this application?
The outdoor dining was originally approved, I believe, on July 24th of last year.
Right, so when we approved this last year, we did so without them having a lease agreement with the town.
You did so because you thought they had.
Right.
Right.
Was there a representation at that time that there was a lease agreement?
Just in the letter of intent.
I didn't go back to last year's letter of intent. I don't know even if there was one. I did go back to the letter of intent from earlier, and then again looked at the letter of intent that's before us now about the representations. But it occurred to me in looking at this and hearing the conversation today that we granted, we approved, not granted, we approved the outdoor dining last year. Did we ask about this? I mean, did it ever come up?
Well, there were only two letters of intent, to be fair. There was last year's letter of intent and this year's
Well,
letter, the one we just got.
No,
in the package now.
yeah, agreed.
The original one was revoked.
The original what?
The original approval by this commission was revoked.
2 weeks ago. They only came once before and asked for outdoor dining, and that was 2012. That was the letter of intent we discussed.
Well, did we approve it though in the spring of this year, for the
Oh,
summer?
we approved it again in the spring with our list of outdoor dining, correct?
So,
Technically, there is no
There's no,
approval for outdoor dining.
Right.
It's been
no, I realize that, but they started using, they commenced use of the town sidewalk on July 25, 2012. That's on
I think that's correct. I think
Page
that's in
3
other, yeah.
of their
Right.
current letter of intent.
The
that's in
current
front
letter
of
of
us.
intent is the one on 14-inch
Yes,
paper. Yes,
right.
correct.
Okay. Commenced use on July 25, 2012. And I mean, this is why they're saying that they want to pay back the back rent from not just this year, but also for last year, for the use they made in 2012.
Right.
So when they commenced use on the sidewalk July 25, 2012, presumably they did so pursuant to an approval we granted them for outdoor dining, right?
Correct.
Right.
Did they, so we had previously granted them that approval without them having a lease at that point in time?
That's
Was there a
correct.
representation in that application that there was a lease agreement with the town?
It's just in the letter of intent that was presented to you as part of the application.
So there was
I
then,
think that's a fair interpretation.
Yes, and they addressed that on their current statement of use on the second page. They addressed that specifically.
Yeah, I think what they did was they were still in negotiations, but both parties assumed that there would be a lease. I think that was what
Right.
it was.
The revised statement of use for this application attempts to address the background of what happened from the applicant's perspective.
Chairman, I think perhaps, I don't know, Commissioner Wagner, don't have the original letter of intent. Maybe it should be part of the record, the original letter of intent, since we're talking about that. I personally have a copy and I've seen it, or do you have it?
Yeah.
Because in the original letter of intent, I recall it saying, the applicant has entered into a lease. It's not, it was in the past tense. It seemed like it was already
Maybe I'm not remembering, like, history correctly. That was submitted to us this year, was it not?
No, no.
That original letter of intent?
This copy that you just handed me is the statement of use. The statement of use, and I'll give copies, we can pass these around for everyone. The statement of use I'm handing around now, so you understand procedurally, is not dated. Unfortunately, it's not dated, but it's on short paper and it's 3 pages long. And it begins by saying, if you look at the second paragraph, it says the applicant wanted to bring something to the community that they felt was a benefit and enhance the community. Several weeks ago, on July 12, 2012, the applicant opened the Chelsea restaurant. That's the 2012 letter.
Right.
And in the next paragraph, it specifically says the applicant has recently entered into a lease with the town of Fairfield to lease the proposed area of the outdoor seasonal dining area.
Got it.
Now, the applicant addresses that in his current statement of use that we have in our packet that has an actual caption of introduction. And it's also not dated, but it's also on 14-inch paper. And on the second page, the applicant, through their counsel, addresses specifically the statement it made regarding the lease, and then tries to explain. It does explain.
So now I've got the fact pattern is gelling. So in spring of 2012, we get the original letter of intent. It goes on our list for approvals. We approve it. They were on our list this year. We recertified them for this year, and then it was brought to our attention that, hey, there's no lease agreement here.
Brought to our attention by the administration.
Right. So it wasn't a second representation, and that was really what I was driving at. It was not an original representation in 12 and then another representation in 13. Okay.
That's correct.
So it's the thing that is just troubling to me about this scenario is that it went on for so long, right? I mean, that this situation existed for such a prolonged period of time, and that there were communications back and forth, about to follow up on this.
But we should keep our discussion, the motion is to table, so we should be
Yeah,
tailored our
I'm
discussion
still
around-
ruminating about my decision as to whether or not I want to, support this table, or whether I think, we really ought to just talk about it and deal with it, okay? I don't know yet, right? And so this is the only opportunity, right, that I get to share with my fellow commissioners what I'm feeling and my thoughts on the subject, right?
Correct.
So that's what I'm doing. And I hope everybody appreciates that for what it is.
I do.
Because to do otherwise would be inappropriate. So, I don't know where the ultimate fault lies here. Look, we obviously all saw the applicant itself through its representative get very frustrated with us not acting on this when it first came on the agenda. And on the one hand, it is an impact on him and his business. And should we be, is this an issue of his attorney, and that his attorney overlooked this and made inappropriate representations to us and didn't follow up, and now we're penalizing the client for the acts of the attorney, right? And I don't know that we want to do that. I mean, look, one of the things that we hear all the time from clients is that and I hear it from members of the public that they feel like they're being penalized through the process and by the conduct of counsel, and that sometimes things aren't handled properly, or perhaps they are handled more expeditiously when handled by certain people and that kind of thing. And I don't want to send the wrong message, right, to the applicant itself. I mean, I have serious concerns, right, about just the whole fact pattern and the representations that were made, and I don't know how else to say it. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
I think Commissioner Alessi
Are we open to discussion?
Well, we have to, our discussion now is on the motion to table, so all your discussions as Attorney Wagner's were has to be within that number. Unless someone is...
No, I'd like to table too,
Make a
because
motion.
I'm up in the air too, because based on the statement of use that was handed in, it seems here that the fault lies on, with Town Attorney Stanton and the First Selectman's office, because it seems to me that they were in an oral agreement. The applicant was waiting for the town to get back to him and never did. It was understood that he was going to pay the rent as of, I think, July 24th or 25th, 2012, and that was all verbally agreed upon. And I just don't think, it's clearly as stated here in paragraph 5 in the background here on a statement of use, that they had been waiting for the town the whole time to get a hold of him. And I think when the First Selectman saw that there was no lease, you know, he kind of shot the gun a little bit right here to shut him down, when I think it lies on the town attorney's fault and not the applicant's.
That's not clear to me.
I mean, I'm not sure how that lies, and I think with this guy is being punished now, this applicant's being punished for something that the town attorney failed to do that seems to be stated here in a statement of use.
Well,
I don't know if this is actually factually correct or not, you know, but, I mean, this is where I seem right now the fault to lie.
yeah.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thanks. And, you know, that really is, I think, you know, a critical point of distinction, because that's not my understanding. My understanding was that, that the town was waiting for the applicant to get back with a revision or a draft of some lease, and, you know, that just kind of never happened, and there were follow-ups and that kind of thing. You know, look, obviously somebody dropped the ball, okay? There's no question about that, right? But the issue for me was the representation that the town had entered into a lease agreement, and that was never corrected, right? In fact, that was never corrected, and weeks went by. I mean, I understand that, you know, in the current statement of use that's before us in the current application, there's an attempt to explain sort of what happened, and that Attorney Walsh expected that it would have been concluded prior to the hearing, that the lease should have been done by the time the application came up for our consideration at that hearing in 2012. So there was a filing of a letter of intent. At the time that was filed, it was not the case that a lease agreement had been entered into. Some period of time passed between the time that was filed and the time that the item came up at our meeting. It didn't happen, and there was no correction made there. Then we came up, we passed the item, right? And that decision was made known to the applicant and his attorney. They knew at that point that no lease was in place. There was no effort to correct the situation at that point. Weeks go by, months go by. It's nearly a year later, and there's been no effort to correct the situation.
By who?
By anybody, by the applicant's attorney, you know, and it basically, I think it's the applicant's duty to make sure that the application has representation of facts that are true and accurate. I mean, I think that's why the attorney and the applicant have to sign the application.
Is it the applicant's fault for Old Post Tavern not paying the town back rent?
What does the Old Post Tavern not paying
Oh, you're
back rent have to
laying
do
the
with
fault
this?
on the applicant, not on the town. The town is just, listen, use my property, pay me. You have to sign a lease to be here. Pay me. They waited a year before this was to take place. I mean, how long should the town go?
Yeah,
I mean, now Old Post Tavern hasn't paid rent in a year. Should the town say, after a year, you haven't paid me in a year? Should I, on a monthly basis, should they say, you didn't pay the rent last month, pay me?
well, I certainly agree with that. I certainly agree with that. You know, and I do fault Old Post Tavern, but that's not before us right now. And
No, I understand.
And I would take that up And frankly, that was one of the things that I was going to talk about, to suggest that, and I made it a part of my comments with regard to the proposed process and the letter of intent and the lease agreement, that the approval be contingent upon being current on all rental payments and the like. You know, my issue is that the applicant never corrected this misstatement, this misrepresentation. My issue is that the applicant filed a letter of intent containing a misrepresentation, and then after the act occurred, never took any steps to correct it. And then it came back up for us on a recertification, and we acted, and the applicant still didn't correct the record. You know, so it's you know, troubling to me, and I don't know which way to go.
For staff and then Commissioner.
And I don't want to hurt the applicant unnecessarily, so I want you to talk to me about this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to
this
staff
might help
and
you,
then-
Matt, a little bit, maybe not. Some of the issues you're talking about really are out of the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The whole issue that Jerry kind of brought up about the reaction or the dealings between the applicant and the town with the initial application and the lease, and why it wasn't drawn up and what the problem was, really isn't your issue. Your issue is the zoning aspect of the proposal, and that was kind of talked about, if you remember, at the planning session, that the town is has put in front of this commission a procedure that they're going to implement for any other similar type application like this, so this won't happen again from their end, that they will not have someone on their property without a proper lease. The second part of that, though, is this commission's review from a zoning standpoint of whether or not the proposed application for outdoor seating is sufficient and you are satisfied and acceptable, that it's safe, and it's economically viable, and it's going to be very helpful in the downtown. All the kind of things that you talked about in the planning session before this. My only recommendation to you is to try to deal with the lease portion. Has nothing to do, in my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that
Well,
very
I'm just
much.
saying, just to move you ahead
Very
on
much
this.
brings
The
into
last comment I'll
focus.
make, is, to answer your question from my point of view, is this second application is trying to address that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Very much brings into focus what we need to do. And, you know, we did have a planning session where we talked about a process to correct the errors of the past, to move forward. I think we should reject the motion to table. I think we should take the item up on our agenda, and we should consider this on its merits. If in fact we tonight talked about a process that we approve of, in which we will have a letter of intent, a map, and a proposal for outdoor dining before us that we will consider based on those criteria, and that this letter of intent meets that criteria, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to act on it tonight.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I'm really troubled by this application. I think, you know, regardless of who's at fault, there's blame. I think it's the applicant's attorney's responsibility to say, look, I need this lease. If the town's not following up, then you bug them and you get them to follow up. But I don't want to hurt the applicant. I really like Chelsea Restaurant. I don't know, I think we should deal with it tonight.
Commissioner Barrett.
On the motion to table, I made that because I didn't know anybody else was ready to decide. I didn't know that I was ready to decide, since we heard a lot of information tonight, whether it affects the zoning issues or not. I don't know. I am clear that if the longer we let this go, I mean, we may never approve it again, so I just say we're not assuming we'll approve it, but by not taking it up, the fact that they've had outdoor dining revoked for 2 weeks, and if it's longer, they will lose revenue. Is that fair? I don't know. I mean, you know, just this is on the motion to table. I recognize that the dining situation in Fairfield, although vibrant, is a competitive landscape, and mainly we do our best to encourage that, but also to encourage, as best as we can, a level playing field. Not everybody has the same parking or land rights or anything like that, but as best as we can. I'm troubled, like, you know, whether it's a zoning issue or not, that we have in front of us a document that was presented to us, that was part of an approval, gains a sentence that is just a misrepresentation. I mean, that's all that is. It doesn't matter what discussion that, it does not say that. It says, has recently entered into a lease. So I'm troubled by that. I'm also recognizing that if Mr. Tetro himself, whether it's his fault or not, or the town attorneys, had not actually brought this to our attention, 5 years would have gone by. I guarantee the applicant would have never said, oh, by the way, we owe you for those 5 years of lease. That would just never have happened. So a lot troubles me. So my motion to table was just like, I just need some more time to think about it. If the rest of the commission wants to decide it tonight, that's fine, but that's why it was to table.
Mr. Jacobs?
The point that Mr. Barrett brought up, I totally agree with the idea that we can't allow statements to come before us that aren't factual. I don't know where we go with this, but the whole idea that, oh, we have a lease, it says it, we have a lease, and they didn't have a lease. So next month, someone will say, we have a minimum square, don't worry, take our word, and they don't have a minimum square. We have to have some way that, you know, people understand that they can't tell us stuff that isn't factual. If we go to decide tonight, I have other issues to bring up, but that's not part of this discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, so and thanks for your comments. I mean, I raised this because I really thought we needed to air some of this, you know, tonight now. And I mean, based on the discussion, I am going to vote to deny the motion to table with the suggestion that we take up the item on, I'll make a motion to approve for discussion purposes so that Commissioner Jacobs can share with us his thoughts and whatever. And if we don't get to that vote, if somehow as a result of talking about the substantive issues tonight, another commissioner decides that they want to, you know, amend the motion or renew the motion to table, I mean, that's fine. But I think that we should take this up tonight. And now I've said my piece.
I'd be willing to withdraw the motion to table. I've heard a lot. Obviously, people want to discuss this, so, motion to table was just because we were ready to discuss it. It
Sounds
like we
good.
are, so
right.
I'll be happy to withdraw that motion.
All right, and so I was the seconder, and I'm willing to agree with that. And with that, I'll move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Alessi seconded. Any discussion?
So,
Commissioner
you know,
Wagner.
I'll restate now substantively my concerns, all right? But it appears as though we have an application now that complies with our earlier planning discussion, establishing a process for approving these things. We have a map, we have a letter of intent, and I think it meets our regulations.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs, then Commissioner Sutter.
I think the discussion by First Selectman Tetro and also comments by Stan Lesser, the town attorney, clarify what the First Selectman's office wants to follow in terms of a process, and they have in fact signed a letter of intent, so the basic terms of a proposed lease are now clear and they're before us. And what we could do tonight is to approve this application subject to the execution of a satisfactory lease between the town and the applicant at a future date.
Thank you, Commissioner Sutter. Commissioner Jacobs.
I'll pass around a picture that I shot of the restaurant with the outdoor dining. And when people look at the picture, you can see that that picture does not meet with the plans they gave us. The plans they gave us show a lot of space that the outdoor dining doesn't come out anywhere near as far as it actually is being used. If you look at the plans, and you look at the tree, and you look at on the plans, the brick, I don't know if you can get a ruler in there, but they're probably looking at, what, 2 feet? Which thing am I using? Which one?
It doesn't matter.
Of course it matters.
No, it doesn't. The way you scale it up from the drawing. What are you trying to measure, Richard?
Between that and that.
Between what and what? I'm sorry. That and that. So okay. You want the width? You want the distance? If you were to extend a line north-south from the tree island, parallel to the western edge of the proposed outdoor dining, how many feet that is beyond 6 feet, 6 inches.
Well,
Okay.
yep.
You want that measurement? Why do you want that measurement? I can give you this, I could tell you
So-
this measurement from here.
Yeah.
Mr. Wendt discussed this measurement here.
Can I interrupt you
That's more-
guys?
That's
Can I
more than
interrupt you
7
guys?
feet.
Because Commissioner Alessi is just really, so the drawing shows all of the tables oriented from, well, there's no...
Parallel to the street.
Parallel to the street. The photo shows that the tables inside, close to the building, are perpendicular to the street, which results in the perimeter sort of bumping out further towards the road, which probably makes that distance visually, you know, it's also probably a little bit deceiving too because of the angle from which the picture's taken. You know, I mean, the picture is, you know, from like a landscape view, but in any event, it does appear that the tables are oriented differently, and that will make that come out a little bit further and encroach a little bit more on the...
And right now, they're saying 7 feet 3 inches from the end to the curb, and 6.5 or 6 feet 6 inches from the building out. And if you look at the picture, there's no way that distance is more than that distance.
Well, to be fair here, they're not, I don't think they're asking us to approve what's in your picture. That's
Correct.
what was there last time.
That's right.
And something else you might want to
I don't
know
know
is
when that picture
it
was
looks as
taken
though the picture depicts the dining coming to the south all the way to the end of their building, bless you.
Bless
Look
you.
at their proposal, they're not going to come, they're going to be coming, what, 4 feet maybe? Short of the edge of their building.
Yeah, where's the door? Is that the front door
Is that
here?
what they've been using, or that's what they want?
Where's the last application, what they were looking for? We can see if they were consistent with what they were asking us last time, a 15 by 6.5 foot patio. This time, they're asking us for a
15 by 6.5.
15 for a half-six patio. So they've either moved the location from last time, or they extended beyond what we gave them last time.
Even if you look at the photo, you look at the awning above, the awning is probably correct, and they made the patio go further than the awning.
Mr. Jacobs, can I ask, when did you shoot this photo?
The week before we approved it.
Okay, so it was last summer, so we
Yes.
don't know what they've been maintaining.
No.
I wish we had them, I wish this was a public hearing where we could ask them that
So
question.
that's what they did illegally,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
the first time.
Because for all I know, again, you know, this is a photo from last year, for all I know, this is what they've been maintaining for over a year, I don't know that.
Exactly. And you know what? Now you've just reminded me, is this the establishment that actually went out and just had outdoor dining before they even got
Before we
approval
got
from us?
approved. Yes. I would actually make that representation myself, and not much. And, you know, I would, if it wasn't for this, I would just attribute it to enthusiasm, Commissioner Wagner, because they said it opened on July 12th. I can say factual that I was there on July 20th when they had outdoor dining, because it was the Friday before. I just know it was the Friday before it came before us, and not, so they definitely opened it, put outdoor dining. It was probably a couple days.
Right. So the possibility exists that they started this outdoor dining when you took this photo, before they sought our approval. They came in with the plans for 15 by 6.5, and once we approved it, they changed the outdoor dining to comply with what they got approval for, and that last summer and that now this summer, they've actually been in compliance with what they were approved for. We don't know differently from that.
Right.
Before us. I think that what's before us now is to approve the plans, not your photograph, and that if we did approve that, they would have to be sure that they were in compliance with what was approved, so that we didn't look foolish.
Along with the awning.
How does that sound? Does that sound about right? So that we don't look
We can't.
foolish.
He's talking hypothetically.
Hypothetically, we would look awfully foolish if an applicant came in with an application for outdoor dining, already having the outdoor dining, right? And then we grant them that, and then they proceed to have outdoor dining, not in keeping with what we had approved for them. Even after they had represented they had a lease when in fact they didn't, and a year later it gets raised that they didn't, we revoke it, then they come back, we approve them we reinstate their approval only to have them now, you know, continue to violate or flout what gets approved. That would make us look pretty darn foolish, I think.
And I wouldn't expect that would happen since we have our newly appointed CEO sitting here. We haven't scared him away yet, running. And when he's out rounding up all those signs, part of his duties are, especially with this application, is to measure and look at this. And if there is a violation here, we will not hesitate, as we've
I
done
mean,
in
I
the
want to
past,
make it clear.
to notify
Yeah. The awning looks
take
like
immediate
it's-
action.
I mean, it just looks that way, but he'll have to figure that out,
And
too.
we've set the standard last year. We had an establishment that didn't do what we specifically allowed them to do, and we immediately
Yeah.
shut them down for the rest of the season effectively, and I think we may have sent a letter to liquor control threatening their which could pull their license for the entire facility. And I think a lot of businesses learned a lesson, or the power of this commission, to just, don't take more than we give you.
So that's a good tool to use against this establishment if they choose to do the same.
We have a CEO who can do the same thing. If we should approve this, he'll know exactly what we approved.
Yeah.
And he'll keep an eye on this as every restaurant to make sure it's a fair playing field for everybody.
So, and, you gotta choose who's gonna go now.
Well, are we done with this point, Commissioner?
I have one more point to make, and then I'll keep my mouth shut.
Commissioner Wagner promises this is his last point.
I promise. So on the one hand, I want to make it clear to, the applicants generally, that if they are, honest and faithful with us, that we're transparent with them, that we have regulations for a reason, that if their application is in compliance with our regulations, that things should be, fluid and easy, and it shouldn't be difficult for people to get things done, but at the same time, they need to be honest with us, and we can't be taken advantage of, basically, and made to look foolish, So, that's it. We should approve it, and they should act in accordance with our approval.
Commissioner Jacobs has another point.
Another point, when this first came before us, I believe I was the only vote against it. My reason for voting against it was they had outdoor dining on the side. They came to us and said, we want to make a greenhouse. We want to enclose our outdoor dining. And when they did, that's when they called, what'd they call the place, the greenhouse?
That was the last restaurant.
Yeah.
Sarah something, Sarah?
No, Sarabon, it was after Sarabon.
Right. So they enclosed their outdoor dining, and I was like, and you're going to come back and ask for outdoor dining again?
Yeah, but they didn't, though.
It says the building with the property.
I know, and then it was enclosed.
So they took their outdoor dining, they enclosed it. I would say they had their outdoor dining, they enclosed it.
But it doesn't bother me as much because, if you have a business that's an established footprint, an established structure, and you could clearly make it bigger and get outdoor dining as well, why were you restricted to keep your building on whatever size it always was with a strange construction? I mean, if you get the approvals, if you have the zoning approvals and you made the building the correct size that fits within our regs and still want outdoor dining, why treat this business any differently than someone like the post office that came in tonight with a new design with outdoor dining?
Who had outdoor dining, enclosed it, and asked for more, and we
No,
denied.
it's not fully enclosed.
There's
though. It's
different
an
reasons.
existing patio
There's-
on their plans.
That's different. I think you can't compare the two. I mean, just, we allowed them to close in what was outdoor dining and make it part of the building. I don't think that precludes them from having more. Or what if this restaurant came in and asked for half the outdoor dining? Instead of 15 feet by 6, they asked for 6 feet by 6. And next year realized, boy, this has worked out great. Let's put another table. We still have plenty of room. The town agrees. We can't say, no, we gave it to you once. You can't have it any bigger. Or the opposite, it comes in next year and says, we want it smaller, that was too much space, we looked empty all the time. I want a smaller outdoor dining. We wouldn't say, no, you get it bigger, nothing. I think you have to be flexible a little bit, personally.
I agree with that.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I am really torn about this. I'm getting a hard time getting beyond the fact that we weren't given true information, but I guess I will vote to approve it, because I don't want to harm the restaurant, but I'm not happy.
Is there any other discussion? Do you have any other things you want to bring up?
Yeah,
Commissioner Barrett.
yeah, it's fine, if you vote to approve, I don't know that I want to suggest too much alternatives. Under different circumstances.
I don't know, you might.
I would suggest like what we did with Wild Rice, where we actually had a dispute about how far it came out farther than our plan. You know, another thing that concerns me, I realize he's not supposed to testify on this, but it was really related. This first started because the first selectman said, hey, they're taking up the whole sidewalk. I'm just concerned that they've been doing that all along, and that this plan just represents something, but that's not really the reality of what they're doing. I wish I could see how it was set up myself. I haven't been there in a while, and just make sure I understood what I was approving. I wish I could see it visually.
Commissioner
This is what we're approving right here. And if it's not that, then the zoning enforcement officer shuts them down.
Commissioner Jacobs, just to refresh my memory, about the patio they did used to have that they closed, and I just can't remember the details of that.
I think it had a
That
greenhouse
clouds the whole
front,
issue
didn't it?
because they're in effect
Greenhouse roof.
building a second patio just like Shin was. If you proceed along the same thing.
Outdoor dining?
Okay,
Outdoor dining, and they didn't include.
so I'm really on the fence about this at this point.
My understanding of that is that it became enclosed, it became part of the footprint of the building. And, you know, so I'm not of that same encroachment ilk. I mean, it's part of the building. And the old applicant, or the old tenant left, the landlord now had a building with additional enclosed space, and he leased it. And now the new tenant is coming to us with the same request for outdoor dining that all of his competitors have downtown. A little bit of, few tables on the street. And now he's got a letter of intent from the town, which he should have done a long time ago, but didn't, but whatever, saying that he's gonna get the lease for the space that he needs for the 6 tables, as represented in the plan.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? We prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion, which was to approve outdoor dining, 1326 Post Road, a.k.a. 12 Unclewood Place, compliance application of Irish Hound LLC for seasonal outdoor dining in a center design district, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
The nays are Commissioner Suter, Commissioner Barretts, Commissioner Jacobs. Abstentions? Item carries 4-3. 4-3. There being nothing further on the agenda, this meeting will now stand in adjournment. Thank you.